to start, with a kick, but the mic wasn't working. Hello and welcome everyone. It's the second time we are meeting in Smart Business Zone to embark on day 2 of Mazowsza Development Forum. Today we'll be discussing different issues and problems, engaging you every day. Perhaps we'll be able to come up with answers to several vital questions, or perhaps suggest some brand new solutions you've never thought of before, and solutions that could be implemented into real life. Yesterday we've touched on guidelines for business development, R&D, making inroads into foreign markets, business clusters. One of the findings we've had yesterday that astonished me is we are most creative at 14. Everything that comes later, well, things aren't that rosy as they seem. The theory proved that it's 14, but it's 4 on shattered side.
Druga rzecz, hasła, które padały także z tej sceny, to, że wielkie korporacje, wielki biznes nie zawsze myślą o pieniądzach. Ja mam wątpliwości co do tego, ale jednak takie hasła i takie deklaracje także wczoraj padały. O czym będzie dziś zatem? Formuła Living Lab. To już za chwilę będzie tym, co będzie nas tutaj bardzo interesować, ale rozumiana jako ten mechanizm, to narzędzie, które może wspierać biznes, kultura innowacyjności w organizacjach, jak ona wygląda, jak wygląda organization, how does it look like, merging big organizations and startup, is it possible, przejęciem tego pomysłu i tych innowacji, które startupy mają do zaproponowania, no i na koniec efekty prac naukowo-badawczych dla gospodarki, a także rozmowa współpracy instytucji otoczenia biznesu z przedsiębiorcami. A zatem tematów dzisiaj znowu bardzo, bardzo wiele. Mam nadzieję, że równie albo bardziej ciekawych jak wczoraj. Powiem Państwu tak, frekwencja w tej strefie daje mi ogromną nadzieję na to, że będzie dzisiaj ciekawie i bardzo merytorycznie. Więc nie będę Państwa dłużej zanudzać sobą. Powiem tylko jeszcze tyle, że bardzo gorąco witam także wszystkich tych, którzy oglądają nas.
Okay, at the beginning I can tell you what self-governed team potential, the potential of interdisciplinary team. You have to embrace the ability to share, learn by share of this new technology has not been harnessed yet. Today, one man means more than millions of people in previous era. A single influencer can change the world. Just to mention millions of hits on YouTube, Internet of Things, all those smart objects which ensure your connectivity. The Internet of Things is also cloud computing, the ability to gather big data and data analytics, and this is one of the biggest challenges of the future. And an example of Living Lab. A living lab, which is not exactly like the living lab we'll be discussing today. Experience technologies, experiences of users during interactions with technology, interactions with culture, with different workshops are important, and very often technology helps improve these experiences. Campus Plus, which is to be established in Warsaw, responds to global challenges of the fourth industrial revolution. It's a chance to become the biggest living lab across Europe. And what's most important about Living Lab is the word living business, science, city and society means that in all those spheres, business, urban space, public space, social life and science, social life meaning your office, your home, embrace technologies in everyday life. The project covers several elements. One of them is Warsaw's District of Innovation within the premises of Warsaw's University of Technology's campus. And there you will find core scientific potential. Cezamat will house labs and clean rooms for researchers, for business, and perhaps in the future it will be also residential area. New houses perhaps will be built, benefiting from new technologies. Campus of Warsaw University of Technology is not only a campus, it's public space and a consortium set up by several. Poland's largest space dedicated to state-of-art technologies, one of the biggest investment worth millions of zlotys, and one of the most advanced hubs of this type across Europe. This is the project space. We will be designing a smart residential district. The scale, the operation initiated by science and business. What's the impact on the quality of life in the city? I would like to ask my guests to introduce themselves and tell us very briefly, give us a brief overview of their organizations. Łukasz Madej, Campus plus Cezamat, and Pro Development Company, the business partner of the project and the operator accountable for its implementation. Good morning, Jakub Janusz. Samsung are in several arms. Well, first of all, we produce applied automatics, home appliances and industrial equipment. So this is something we would like to promote and discuss today. I'm a business developer accountable for liaisoning with architects, designers and coordination of investment projects. Marcin Postawka, Innovation Management and Innovation Transfer Center. This is a unit operating for barely 12 months, which is affiliated with the 100 years old Warsaw University of Technology. We promote innovations among students. We help researchers initiate cooperation with businesses. We help startups kick off, but our core business is transfer technologies, and step by step we'll be trying to put it into real life. So thank you for invitation. Mr. Director, question to you, because your center, together with Development, has developed the roadmap for the project. How, in your opinion, can we define Living Lab? What can be special about it? How do we compare to other similar facilities across Europe? What can we do to make implementation of scientific concepts practical. A very difficult question, a question that covers practically everything, starting with legal solutions through the culture of innovation, which begins with the 3-year-old that you introduced to the spirit of enterprise, confidence in the world of business, in the world of science, and I'm saying it because this is what I'm struggling with every day at Warsaw University of Technology, at my company. It's great we've embarked on this project. It's great that we have representatives of Polish authorities in this room who make the law. I'm very happy that we have the Innovations Act, which puts us on the right track, and perhaps the Living Lab formula will prove its mettle. So together with business, with the business community, science is able to respond to their needs, and that's why we operate. And without business, we cannot, all concept will be realized, but because I'm pragmatic, because I'm struggling with major issues, I know which things should be dealt first, and it's great that we have such a place to discuss it, but I think what should follow are real-life activities that would put those two universes together for common good. So I'd like to reiterate again, you know, it's good that we are talking, but please don't get me wrong, perhaps it's a matter of early hour. So today we have representatives of two companies implementing technological innovations every day. And when we were talking off the record, I've learned that the Polish market is very promising, which is why Samsung has chosen Poland to set up its second, after its home country, R&D center. And day by day, you are taking on new staff members. Both of you have been working from the onset of this center's operations in Poland, and some vet is designing smart solutions and is also designing smart buildings that respond and adapt to the external world and number of inhabitants. I know that you are developing your R&D team. What was the main draw of Poland? Why did you decide to pursue R&D activities here? Okay, so let me start from the beginning. What do we do? Well, 2016, in the sales department in Eastern Europe was based in Austria, where we had our business unit, and in Berlin. So our function was coordinated from these two countries. But the French have noticed the potential of Polish market, of residential estates and individual customers who are our core business. So several years ago, a decision was taken. Well, at the beginning, we did not believe in declarations we were hearing, but the main factory was to be transferred to Niepołomice Special Economic Zone, and it's true. There is this facility up and running, employing 200 people. It's mainly an R&D department focused on technological enhancement of mechanical actuators that we manufacture every day. And the entire board, and this is also something which is extremely important for us, 2 years ago, the board, which was based in Berlin and Vienna, because of the scale and because of development opportunities, was relocated to Warsaw. So all those people we knew just from snaps and photos before are working hand in hand with us, because there was a shift of gravitas Polska jako rynek jesteśmy trzecim krajem w Europie, jeżeli chodzi o aktywność skalę
in terms of activities and the range of automated construction business. Well, you've said that this ties to the fact that the Polish region. Yes, it's true. This is how things look like when I'm talking to potential investors, because on one hand, we pursue typical business activities. We cooperate with designers, investors, and architects, and statement made by general contractors, by investors, point out to potential of the market, which is huge. As of today, we are not only working on projects on new office premises to be built in Poznań, Warsaw, or Wrocław. There is also a vast range of investments, including such things like hospitality, all those services related to kindergartens, to school, to healthcare services, also public institutions, sport facilities, hospitals, all these buildings which are rebuilt today, are built from the scratch. There is a whole big business of reinventing existing buildings, and in our view, this is going to grow massively in the coming years. The brand new building of Warsaw Spire on 4 floors features sensors that intake big data about habits of users of these premises. So this scale is much narrower than the one we are alluding to, but this is, you know, the perfect showcase of Living Lab. Where do you see potential applications for collating big data? Well, I think this is a very broad question. The Living Lab, which is currently up and running in our building, has been designed to test IoT technology, IoT at Samsung, our first reference site. So we are researching user habits to identify services we could provide to them. And this is not only about user behaviors. We are trying to harness printers, telephones, tablets, TVs, to boost to make life easier thanks to IoT technology. And you've asked me about big data. We are using big data not only for this product, but also different products. We have lots of experts. By the way, Poland, case of its application. And a question to Łukasz Madej. Well, we see that the world of business needs capabilities of Living Lab. It needs feedback from users. It needs to check in real time how different products are performing to enhance their functionality. So what can Living Lab offer? What may be its impact about specific solutions? It's impossible to do it because our partners are working hand in hand together. It's a space that will nurture R&D, scientists and researchers alike. And this is where we've decided to opt for a very specific brand, and our choice was driven by global trends and the specific profile of companies operating within the district of Mazowsza. So this is IT, photovoltaics, automatics, you know, everything that adds up to smart living. So space on one hand and on the other mobility. So the two chunks that in our opinion will be fastest growing in Poland, and our approach has been aligned to this trend because, you know, you can't do it the other way. And later, we've decided to plan different processes
to deliver specific benefits, because we have to stop thinking in terms of buying something from someone else, in terms of commercializing products or sponsoring products. You need to put a plan in place which will simply state how to build such largest center in this part of Europe, how to certify it, and later we have to sell solutions, and we don't sell them cheap, because if something demonstrates premium quality, you have the right to charge a high price. So we, as the university, have the ambition to become a world-class research institution. So this ties, the business part with the scientific part. Well, the roadmap drafted by your center reveals that we need to have a technological hub incubator, that we need to integrate a number of institutes and labs and within one infrastructure to benefit from the scale effect. Yesterday, the president of BGK has mentioned the scale effect in different sector though, but nevertheless, this is the pivotal effect. So right now my question is about the need for integrating a number of activities within a single system for enhanced efficiency.
Chciałbym poinformować, że wywołanym wcześniej wspomnianym Cezamatem jesteśmy na etapie kończenia negocjacji, żeby stworzyć w Warszawie pierwszy technologiczny inkubator, który będzie funkcjonował w 2 środkach.
The first business incubator, the first one will be affiliated with our center.
Co to da, to jest właśnie odpowiedź na tą drugą część pani pytania, a mianowicie akademicy studenci, którzy są na etapie pomysłów i fajnych rozwiązań, będą mogli powspółpracować z firmami, które będą, mamy nadzieję, korzystać z infrastruktury laboratoryjnej w Cezamacie, tworząc rozwiązania, które będą dedykowane do użytkowników. Tworzyć te nowe usługi, produkty, rozwiązania, ale w oparciu o ideę panelu, w którym dzisiaj uczestniczę, czyli w odpowiedzi na potrzeby użytkowników, i to razem daje
in response to user needs, and I think this will translate into the scale effect. You've touched on users.
Several days ago, there was an article in Gazeta Wyborcza about the concerns of the man in the street connected with the Internet of Things, the concerns that these devices spy on us, follow responsible manufacturers to ensure user security, especially that we, as manufacturers of automatics, first of all, building automatics or automation, we can say that a very important element is the home interoperability system. That's a smart technology, but for the end user, for a typical detached house. And what we were talking about, some geo-localizers or civilian additions of technologies connected with the blinds, heating, air conditioning at home. But what follows is the monitoring, internal cameras, external cameras, yes, histories, logs, and a component of the entire system is also an alarm system, an alert system, which is a priority. And if someone happens to hack the possibility of my coordination on the smartphone or tablet of all these parameters, then I'm facing a problem. And in fact, I'm fully exposed, maybe not as far as my bank account is concerned, but everything around my house is really not protected. And the real scope of an accountable manufacturer should be ensuring that this process of use should not only be used on the PIN and password, but the entire technology should be based on ensuring security. So today, if we recommend anything to our users after many tests, we must guarantee to them that their security guarantee will be ensured by highest acceptance for innovation. And of course, whatever we do technology-wise, it's for people, and we must communicate it through value added that the customer obtains rather than the engineering language. The entire modus vivendi, the possibility of living in a better environment. The entire Living Lab has this thinking formula. This is very crucial because it's a combined process. We educate people at the same time, but it's not from the level of lecturing halls, but rather by involving consumers. We make them co-authors of our solutions, and we prepare them as we develop this project to make sure that it is fit for introducing new technologies, marketing new technologies, and talk about an understandable language what the entire revolution is about and why it makes sense to build this in Poland. This is a certain umbrella under which we have to move with regard to value added to the man in the street and the economy. What's more, the increasing scale means that these devices are becoming more and more available for the man in the street. They're no longer so costly. I'm not only talking about smartphones, but also those central units managing the automation at home. You also mentioned some aspects of technological revolution, and you said that we cannot just stand aside, switch off, and say, I'm going to wait till the train passes by. Also, from the point of view of jobs, such markets are awaiting, such as the Indian market. Whereas in the U.S. such solutions are capital-driven. I mean, there are such technologies, and they replace people. In India, there are more people, but they are cheaper. And here, unless we take advantage of this, we will miss our opportunity, not only from the point of view of the average user, but also from the point of view of the town region. So Campus Plus is supposed to help us deliver a recognizable large-scale place to which we will attract R&D departments of many internationals, multinational. We are developing this strategy for the innovation quarter, which is supposed to be a new opening of Warsaw in the international market, so that in the most important events such as MIPIM, the fair municipality is something that drives it, and I'm sure that I believe that we will be presenting this project on par with London or Copenhagen. So this is just by way of introduction from me. In responding your question, madam, I can say that there's several arguments to confirm it. And during yesterday's debates, one of the ladies quoted a business classic stating that people don't fully know what they want. That's why you need to prepare it and deliver it to them. I don't want to talk on my boss's behalf, but I believe that Samsung does not follow this assumption. Hence, we are here, and that's why it's very important what the response of the end user is to a product that they get to test. And based on this, only based on this, are we able to create the final reality. Sometimes it also works to our disadvantage, but as I was talking to you yesterday, we present certain solutions during fairs, we present them to customers, and from that moment on, there's quite a long period before the products are launched. Often this means that we're a little bit delayed in terms of the deadline, but as far as the user evaluation is concerned, it's very important. That's why we're present there. Another element to confirm it is something that we have not mentioned all that much today. It's the certification and the university authority that's behind this. That's also an element allowing us quite precisely to dedicate a given product, because we are we're also involved in several other solutions, for instance, as Modern Buildings Association that we talked about yesterday. That's an institution which is involved in cooperation with the development and certification of products while observing technical requirements. And the greatest problem for us is to make sure that the final product used during investment processes could meet the parameters assumed. We're not capable of reach this in laboratory conditions. Under laboratory conditions, this has to be done under living lab. So to confirm it, it's the end user that has this. That's the prosumer co-creating this, and at the same time that we're talking about the verification by the user, verification by universities, by R&D centers. This means how much business needs this in a whole flow of the perpetuum mobile of innovations. Jakub, could you add something to this? Yes, I'd like to add that the educational element will be very much key to this. So people who will be part of this campus, who will be coming, working and co-creating this campus will also be impacting the way the campus is created. They will see the technologies and they will see the solutions to their potential solutions to their daily problems. So this is something that can hardly be overestimated. We started with this Samsung Living Lab in New York City, and this is an element which will be used for everyone. We've heard the voice of the business, of science, and I'm here on behalf of the user. One thing goes without saying, wrapping up today's debate, that's a fact that this mutual 360 observation, like this camera that we have here, the world of business, the world of science, the user, will also result in a certain methodology and analysis of what is being done, so that not only a pilot program is done, but also a repeatable program, scalable program that can be applied not only in Poland, not only in Warsaw, but generally in Europe. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your interventions. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much also. I hope that all those to whom probably Living Lab was a mystery, or they didn't know quite what it was, or knew only as much as the name suggested. A couple of minutes break, and we'll be inviting you to a next panel. And let me remind you that the workshops and the stands that we have prepared are at your disposal all day through.
Proszę, że za chwilę zaczniemy. Szanowni Państwo, już za chwilę w strefie... Szanowni Państwo, w strefie...
Ladies and gentlemen, in Smart Business Zone, because that's the name of our beautiful blue zone, we're starting the next discussion panel, the panel about which we'll be talking in the context of combinations, business, hybrid organizations, how to create value added in a multidimensional world. How to do it is a key question, and our panelists will be answering this question in various dimensions. I believe that the today, because we will be talking about hybrid organizations generally, not only business hybrid organizations. And ladies and gentlemen, our guests during this panel are four gentlemen, quite unique. Let me just ask them alphabetically. Professor Andrzej Blickley, very well known to Warsavians, but let me also say that he's also a professor of exact sciences, also running various workshops, following what's going on in the world, and a great supporter of the hybrid dimension. Mr. Robert Perkowski, the mayor of Ząbki, and please join us again. Let me repeat the invitation for you, if I may. Also, I'd like to welcome Professor Jerzy Witold Pietrewicz from the Warsaw School of Economics, also a researcher and a practitioner in terms of new phenomena in the economy, and Mr. Dariusz Żuk, the head of business, diversified gender-wise. But let me invite everyone into the room, those of you who would like to listen more about hybrids. Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you gentlemen first, what hybrid quality is in the first place, and is it true that by and by more and more various organizations, and you represent business as well as local governments, since we were hosting both of you, Messrs. Professors, we also have scientific knowledge present here, so are we moving towards the hybrid quality? Professor Blakely, I think it is. However, under various standards, various slogans, I recently took part in. So these ideas, as well as the turquoise company, this name introduced by Frederic Laloux, they define a society which starts being interested in how they're living, what they're eating, what they're wearing, how they're working. A society that would like for companies or organizations not only to deal with the accomplishment of the basic goals, delivery of products and goods, but to create social benefits. Not only social benefits, but basically deliver benefits for all stakeholders, for employees, for business partners, the society, the state, and of course for owners. So in fact, the split between the public and private sphere, between business and NGOs, social organizations, is becoming more and more artificial. I mean, it's getting blurred. I mean, it's not. It didn't used to be artificial, but right now companies are starting to play a social role as well, and NGOs also some role in delivering some services. So in fact, this split is getting blurred. Professor Pietrewicz, Warsaw School of Economics. Mr. Professor, you've been watching what's going on in the Polish economy, not only the hybrid aspect, but also all sorts of various other phenomena. What does this change look like from your perspective? Are we really drifting towards new phenomena in the economy, be it hybrid phenomena, or will it be like a shared economy? To what extent are we advanced in these terms in Poland? I don't think Poland is very much diverging from global trends. What I mean is that we've been observing an increasing importance of corporate social responsibility. Companies are getting socially involved, taking on initiatives for the natural environment, for those who have been affected, is the resources better. And this shared economy, which is functioning right now and occurring on the margin of Poland's economy in a very much contested way, like let's take Uber for instance, it's showing that one can organize business in another way to a greater benefit both for companies as well as the community. This is a new quality in our state at the Ministry of the Economy, and from the point of view of the relationships between the economy and the public sphere, how can this hybrid quality look? Do you think public administration could also move towards the hybrid quality? I mean, everyone, the professor was mentioning that the differences are getting blurred between the public and social private sectors. I believe that the society would be as free from conflicts as possible, and to reduce the poverty zones. And this should be clashed or checked against the capacities of the state. That's why one should try to organize in a different way and try to attract entities, and the more of the social element is involved of this social activity, the better from the state's point of view. That's how a civic society is being built, which needn't necessarily be so costly. That's why it's in the interest of the state to build such hybrid organizations. Mr. Żuk is stimulating and accelerating new business projects on a daily basis, and you have access to the brains of many people who create new projects. You've been creating something which is called the Entrepreneurial Poland, to make sure that and there are some guests, but on the 99.9% basis, we're focusing on the bottom line, on the money, and that's the type of thinking that corporations represent. On the other hand, we have the NGOs thinking that which are doing something in their garage, but without money and scale, they cannot do from any further. But I hear the largest companies were started in a garage. Yes, but to develop, they need to get out of this garage, and that's the art of combining these two worlds, combining money and the scale afforded by the resources. You mean that you can do it for the sake of idea and money at the same time? Yes, you have to do it simultaneously. And the world is in fact evolving in this direction. Mind you that young people who create incubators and invest, I'm inviting them to follow their passion, follow their idea. And today we have technologies, we have the internet, we can find the passion, we can learn something quickly. It used to be a path designed by our parents. They said, go and be a lawyer because all generations have done it. And now through technologies we can find and follow our passion, our dreams, and people should follow them.
Be able to develop and spend money. So this hybrid nature should be quite normal. It should be part and parcel of the world we live in. But isn't it true that, especially in Poland, where you have two different universes coming together, for example, business and administration, but there are two unlikely pairs such as culture and business or culture and administration? Isn't that we are living in silos and we are struggling to come together? So are we ready for that in Poland? It's a question to all of you. Relax and grow. You will always put first the need. You know, you can't look through the perspective of the sector. It's the operating model that comes first. If you want to help someone, if you are passionate about it, you need scale, you need resources, you need to take people on board. And this is possible today. We've got 176 unicorns worldwide. These are multi-billion case of the shift in the mindset. So self-government people who represent the government, and they're very close to people, so you sense best human needs, you are able to swiftly respond to them. Are you trying to get out of your silos? Fed. You know, when we are talking about hybrid enterprises, we've had virtual, smart enterprises, wiki, prosumer enterprises, and right now you had hybrid manicure, you had hybrid trains, you had street lighting, which is hybrid, and hybrid. You need to do your best to make the most of your resources. And it's true, we are now living in times where fierce competition is not a rare sight anymore. Even self-government people have to put their best foot forward to meet the needs of residents. For example, my city has tripled the number of its residents. Wow, I'm impressed. I don't know whether you can credit it to the self-government. Perhaps it's up to citizens. Well, there are different reasons. You know, the mayor holds no credit for that. I have just two, little credits, to new residents, but to meet demands and needs of such a dynamically growing community with very limited prospects, with very limited possibilities, look at what's happening in legislation. There are new reforms coming in on the time, and, it certainly doesn't make doing business easier. And we self-government people, we argue that it doesn't make our life easier too. So we need to reach out for those hybrid or mixed solutions. So perhaps this is a solution, this is a response to those challenging times. Nothing is certain, nothing is stable anymore. Change has become constant, and perhaps we should get used to it. Because Mr. Mayor says that this mixed hybrid nature comes as a response as the inability of the public sphere to meet all its obligations. Żuk says that hybrid nature is a response of people who want to pursue their passions, but they are spending lots of time at work. So it makes no sense to separate those two words. Instead of doing, I can use brand names, but, the hottest, like the city we are working for, we are going to perform worse. We have Mohammed Yunus, the winner of Peace Nobel Prize, promotes the idea of what he calls social enterprise, because he argues that we shouldn't look for work elsewhere. Think about things. This is business, and public life is something completely different. So when you are doing business, you are earning money, what social means. And I think that in countries like Poland, with a heritage, with a legacy of communism, which has taken its deep toll on our mindset, it's even more challenging. Can I answer first? Because my uncompromising nature prompts me to do so. Hybrid economy, this is a term which was popular in the 1980s. This phenomenon was also known as the reformed socialist economy, but this means that we've seen some elements of it in Poland back in 1980s, and I think similar trends were witnessed in Hungary and China. Would you like to join a discussion? Would you like to comment? Would you like to ask a question, or perhaps provide your own definition of hybrid business, or perhaps hybrid nature is only a passing fad? If not, I would like to ask you to provide example. If it's true that we are going hybrid, do we have is probably more than 2,000 years old, but until recently it was believed that it's a beautiful idea, but you need money to live such life, and that it have space, their own creative space. People are creative by nature, and creativity is hampered from kindergarten. So if a company is offering such creative space, it then turns out that it's able to ignite the creative potential in people. The company is not only working for itself, but also for communities, and I see more and more such companies. Perhaps this is not a massive phenomenon, but I'm not doing market research. I've had different meetings this year, and I've seen more than a dozen companies operating in this turquoise format as dubbed by Frederic Laloux, and they've enlarged their creative potential because basically each and every employee is competent to make a decision, provided that he or she also takes accountability for that decision. Doesn't it lead to implosion of those companies? No, but accountability is the key. So confidence is something that cannot be imposed on people. You can't even demonstrate it if there are no good conditions. And to have confidence, you need to have accountability, and this process takes a lot of time, because if the company resembles a labor camp, there's no confidence between people. You need to punish people, you need to intimidate them to get them working from dawn until dusk. And probably people at the top believe that people are lazy and stupid. I know turquoise companies, most of them, not all of them, were incepted with this idea in mind. They were not aware of hybrid companies or open eye economy or turquoise company. 4 mates from Gliwice, one of them was sacked from a label printing company. They've decided to set up a company that all of them would come to in the morning smiling, and the company has been operating for 16 years. It has. There is a big team. Everyone is happy, and I've seen it with my own eyes. How did you measure happiness? I was talking to people. This is something you sense. It's not something that would become apparent in Excel spreadsheet. In Bhutan, the government measures happiness of its citizens. But now a question to Professor Pietrewicz. Would the same happen in administration? Can we have happy officials?
Nasze wrażenie, że jednak tutaj każdy z nas trochę inaczej pojmuje tę organizację hybrydową.
I think we have different notions of hybrid organization. For Mr. Professor, it's a company, but differently organized. No. It could be any organization. It doesn't have to be a business. Okay, for me, hybrid organization is a project. It's an organization, a project which combines features, culture, expectations from the public, private sphere and some features of NGO. And a classic example of a hybrid organization is the Great Orchestra of Christmas Charity, a private-run initiative by Mr. Owsiak pursuing public goals, because things he is doing are things that the government should be doing, the state should be doing, so he's reinforcing the state, and at the same time he has enormous support of the public. So three sectors come together successfully to implement a joint project. This is my notion of hybrid organization, the hallmark of Poland on global scene, and which is why this is an example to follow. And there are also different projects which fall into this category. For example, from the world of finance, there is the Eco Fund. The Eco Fund that was established by Western states, providing money to Poland, but they offered money under one condition. This money had to be spent on ecology, on green technology. So there was the social goal which should be pursued by the state. But there are different initiatives. There is wide cooperation of NGOs that helps to implement this goal. And there are plenty of different examples in the world of science where social organizations cooperate with universities. For example, my university, Warsaw School of Economics, is cooperating with different institutions to educate the public, to prepare young people for changes, to introduce them to the spirit of enterprise. So this is not a formula for the brave new world, but this is an important trend, an important development trend in the modern society, and its impact, in my view, will be growing because people will need more cooperation. They will be willing to help others. They will be taking in. We are talking about weeks. Well, yes. And going to work which you loathe.
Stosowanie filozofii, które kiedyś były zarezerwowane do jednej sfery, a teraz można to tak naprawdę zmieszać.
Now you can mix different things together. It reminds me of the world of science. I don't know if you remember at university several decades ago when I was starting my studies, we did not have such departments. So there is a shift, there is a change. And now my question about management. In the 20th century, we are living in a whole new era. We are giving orders, we are verifying efficiency and performance. Is this the dominating management model, or is it changing?
Oczywiście jest ten model taki.
Well, of course, there is this model.
Zamordystyczny, tak, w firmach.
There is a model, a management model introduced at companies where people are forced to work by their supervisors. I was recently asked to present the vision of the future business, and I said there will be no work in the future in 2 decades. Why? Because people will be doing things they love. It won't be work anymore. So if you if you will have to do things. And coming back to your question, we will be merging or bringing together different organizations with different passions rather than forcing people to work. We'll be building new ecosystems. Very often I argue that we'll have lean companies of the next, surrounded by thousands and hundreds of startups cooperating with each other within an ecosystem. Cooperation will have resources, accounts, major scale, and customer base, and startups will be providing innovations, and this is something big companies lack. This is best showcased by Apple. Jobs accidentally came up with the idea of App Store, and he started creating this brave new world. Apple employs less people than Polish Post. I think many companies employ less people than Polish Post. You know, with all due respect to Polish Post, you know, they have more exciting products as well. So Apple came up with the idea of App Store, and today they have several 100,000 startups working for Apple in full synergy. They don't need anyone to force them to work. They do it because they want to have new apps released. For example, new apps for runners that measure the pulse and blood pressure, or communicate what's the blood level, what's the sugar level. So if you're a part of the ecosystem, you're making an active contribution to the company. No one is working within this system. We say that skinny cat doesn't catch mice, but not only organizations have to be lean to cooperate with startups. Well, states are leading countries where officials have no limos. They order cars online, taxi cabs, for example, Singapore or Finland. Instead of embassies, they have branches, private-run companies promoting countries abroad. This is something that has, and you'll be surrounded by different hybrid entities helping you implement different self-government ideas. Well, you need common sense in everything. Going lean can go drastic, and it can deliver opposite effect, because there is my organization is a hybrid organization. It's not, you know, objectively we can discuss hybrid ventures, hybrid projects mentioned by Professor Piotrewicz. You know, if we discuss hybrid enterprises in this concept, it would be much easier to reach an agreement. There are plenty of examples. It's usually the after effect of financials. For example, a tunnel on the railway track in the town of Ząbki, an engineering project. Some much bigger cities would never embark on. And we've built it. Some people asked us, are you that rich like Radom or any other city? No. But we've tried to effectively make the most of our potential. We've used hybrid funding. We had EU funds, but it wasn't sufficient, so we had our own resources, but we went to the Ministry of Infrastructure, we went to the county, we had 5 different sources of funding for a single investment. I have not heard of another project pursued by self-government finance-wise. But as a result, we succeeded. It's infrastructure deeply needed by our residents, and we are implementing other investments by bringing together different stakeholders. For example, we bring together share developers, residents, and we have public funding available, so we always try to engage all stakeholders for a common goal and to deliver needed services in a short period of time. From the perspective of city authority, hybrid financials are very desired, not the key issue. Let me give you two cases which illustrate being lean and the role of self-governments versus the world and versus changes which are already taking place. We have allocated 5 years not used. They are aging. No one is working there because you need to open tenders, you need to buy software, you need to buy installations. There is no excess, wide excess. You can't use them effectively. We've mentioned the Grand Orchestra, Christmas charity. You know, let's give them double the amount they've raised. For example, Polish NHS. Why can't they give money to an organization which is such an effective fundraiser? I think it would put us on the global map if we've done it. We are pumping money into ineffective schemes like Polish National Health System, which cost dear, and lack of not being lean costs us a lot of money. Perhaps it's because of mental barriers. Perhaps it's because we are used to doing things in a certain way since kindergarten. This is what Professor Blikla said. We are hardwired to do so. So its government is stimulating, but different entities are doing the actual job and cooperating with this self-government. I think every self-government member would say, yes, I've got an open mind, I'd love to do so, but how can we do it? This is a time and energy-consuming process.
Questions connected with registration, taxation, the issuance of tax, of administrative decision indicating the right taxation level. That's a procedure defined in the administrative proceedings code. We'd like to do it. We'd like to administer those items which we have not been able to outsource, but we don't have enough competences to do it, in our opinion, in a more efficient way, because this is a highly regulated sphere. And despite our will, maybe our experience and good ideas, in some areas it's basically difficult to perform, because let's imagine that in our town or city, a town with 70,000 inhabitants, 33,000 are registered, and only 20,000 have a share in the income tax. We cannot afford to employ too many people in administration, because if we take our tasks, which are attributed to the entire funding to the entire population and are being funded only by part of those residents, any sort of extravagance would make our functioning impossible. It seems that we are quite a good example here of a hybrid organization. Many of our activities are outsourced, even to commercial entities. Can you give us an example? Well, let's take some, for instance, the water supply companies, or we have some tasks connected with culture, recreation, and sports. Why? Because as you look for money, often it boils down to money. I guess that the financial aspect is very important for you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, unfortunately, it is a painful item, because the main thing is to satisfy the needs of our residents, and so it's a question, that's the base. Outsourcing, in fact, is meant to lean our organization and to perform our tasks in a more efficient. It just becomes rarely. It happens rarely because we have a similar way of thinking. I'm coming back to the foundations about the technological parks. As part of our regional program, we have funded some of them. Some others were funded at another level, but I fundamentally disagree because I believe the state has to build those parks, because which entrepreneur is capable of building a private park? We have probably one example in Wielka Polska where they indeed did build their own park, but it seems the state has to invest in parks. The question is what we have done. If what we have done so far is not too much, it's definitely feasible. And I have to agree that well, partially, I cannot give you any examples, but these parks, these labs that have been built, either don't function as they should as yet, or they are being empty, but they're partially definitely function, and you probably have to ask someone from the scientific sector, probably a representative of the Warsaw University of Technology. But I still believe what we've done over the last programming period, funding period, will be used. We still have some programs to stimulate the utilization of the infrastructure built in the previous period, and I still believe that we will be successful and that they won't stand empty. It's rather a question of what we should have earlier, whether something should be built on a bottom-up basis and then to find someone to support it, or to build something on a top-down basis, to build some platforms to do something, and then the question is whether something will be created in these platforms. Mr. Ziuk, would you like to comment on this? I understand this kind of thinking, and I appreciate the entity and Mariusz for what he's done and he's been doing, but I believe this should be taken from another angle. I think first someone had a need, a company, an organization, or there's an interesting idea that we support, rather than deciding on a top-down basis, decide on some projects or some actions, because often it can be the case that it's basically not needed. I remember we were rose based on the cooperation with the private sector, rather than deciding that the government, the central government, local government, or the municipality will know everything and they'll be good at everything. I just disbelieve it. And I believe that there has to be a core competence someplace, and if you want to be good at everything, and there's one super manager at the top who's knowledgeable in everything, I just refuse to believe it. And the startup model basically refutes that, and shows as it shows which direction the world is moving in. So I understand that you can just observe it in the business sphere. It looks like the best startups get money to grow, and as they grow, often greater corporations buy such enterprises, they merge. So innovations often arise in smaller organizations because larger ones are no longer innovative. And it can be said that it's the same that in public administration also, if something is old and extensive, it's very difficult to innovate, but young organizations often help. Just one sentence, may I add something? In line with Kaufman's research, in 2011, it was for the first time that startups created more innovations than R&D centers globally. That's a major breakthrough in the way the world is functioning. And likewise, we can be talking about governments the same. Governments are the largest corporations, and they don't innovate much. If they want to innovate, you have to look for them elsewhere. And at the same time, as you compare the monthly users of Instagram, Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, it's more than even China. Facebook is the largest state globally. It's not China. Okay, we're running out of time. Unless someone would like to add something, have no passion. So how do you envisage that in 20 years' time they would follow something that hasn't even been created? Because as you look at the statistics, in Poland only 4% of the population, even people who wanted to start up their own company was below 1% at the Warsaw School of Economics, the business school. Given the access to technologies, the internet, the access to knowledge, which will be happening in a greater dimension, because now mostly we have access to simple news, gossip, things that we're interested in, but it's changing. We'll be getting access to greater knowledge. We have free universities. Stanford is making free studies available. You can learn from the best ones globally. We have Global Assembly, which is running free courses, General Assembly it is, I'm sorry, free courses in coding and so on. So it's changing by and by. And I believe that in 20 years' time, everybody will be able to find something that turns them on, because everybody has something that turns them on. That is their passion and dream, and they will be able to do it. And the simple stuff will be done by robots. So that was a wrap-up by Mr. Żuk. Now, Professor Blikle, over to you. I believe that each person is born full of passion and of interest. Then the wrong educational system basically eliminates this. So children should not be sent to school. Yes, they should be sent to a different school, and these different schools are around. They don't permeate, they don't predominate, but there are such schools where students sort of shape the educational curriculum. And it's not that they don't want to learn and they sit in front of TVs. No, there are schools where students are not even required to stay in class. They can just leave to the hall anyway, and any time. But in class, such interesting things are going on that they basically don't do it. On the first 3 days, when they don't have to stay in class, they stay in the hall. But then it turns out that it's so interesting in class, because the entire teaching progress is about projects. It's not that we learn physics. A project is about building a bicycle. You have to devise it, design it, and build it. At the same time, you have to learn the Pythagoras theorem, and something about the structure of the human body, and something about movement. And this project takes 3 years. Actually, you don't have an individual who'd like to get something, but they cannot define it. There's a long way towards working in the turquoise company. Not necessarily. Such companies are quite numerous in Poland. One of them is in Kalisz. So the question is about passions. That they represent the adequate level of knowledge. The effect was that they treated it seriously, and at the end of the day, I had a huge problem to enforce this knowledge from them, because elicit this knowledge from them, because they basically didn't have it. So I tried to combine both. On the one hand, they don't have to, but at the same time, by creating a certain system of incentives, I make them take advantage of this, because learning is a process of accumulating knowledge through contact, through participation. There are different paths for accumulating knowledge, but in alluding some facts, actually there is an organization, Global Entrepreneurship Monitor, which, per the research run around 2010, on average, on a global basis, 2.9%, and the desire to seek, because that's how progress and innovation starts, and that's why you need to take care of this and turn on the green lights and the conditions, create conditions. But still, this will not define the level of our living. This will, at its best, changing it in a positive way, and that's why the responsibility of the state cannot vanish. The state is the largest organizer of our social lives, and to replace it with a public initiative would be destructive, I fear. And the last word goes to representatives of the local government. Very briefly, what can you do to make sure that there are more passionate people in local communities? Well, thank you very much to the gentleman from the public who just directed us to this fact that the people are most important, because we're trying to follow the contemporary world to make administration more efficient and enterprises more efficient, to find basically some sound innovations. And many enterprises have remodeled their systems, their functioning, and decided, and they know by now, that it's easiest to find innovation outside, among their own customers. And all of us, in fact, as we're talking about good practices, we should take advantage of those good practices. So that's our role, and the role of the state will probably be always key for us. But ladies and gentlemen, let's try to summarize this, where some passions are generated, social interest, on condition that someone will have a hybrid approach to this. Ladies and gentlemen, this is everything. Thank you very much, all the gentlemen, Mr. Pietrowicz, Mr. Żuk, Mr. Bilke, and Mr. Mayor Pietrowski. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for your presence. And may I invite you to the Warsaw School of Economics, to the master classes of Mr. Blakely, and to Ząbki Town, to the think tank at the National, and to think tank center, naturally. Thank you very much. Thanks to all the panelists. Thank you very much, ma'am, moderator. I don't think I must admit, we've been talking about such tools at length, and among others, it was based on one of the presentations. We decided that we were most creative at the age of 12 or 14, and then it only is getting worse. But we won't worry about this. And the next R&D tools are the innovation culture in corporations, because we've been talking a lot about innovation, innovativeness, and what the innovative culture might look like in corporations. This will be told us by Agata Józef, from Innovations Director. So without any further ado, please tell us more about this next tool. Agata Józef, Research and Innovations. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I think it's very good that you should have asked this question about small towns and villages and the passions that we might or might not have and where to learn them. And this, what was said, that even children should be inspired to be creative, innovative, to teach them empathy, to teach them trust, because only in such an environment can such innovations arise. Let me move to the side, because I believe I'm disturbing you just a bit. What I'd like to tell you is a couple of words about the innovative culture, about what it is and what can be done if we don't want to work for a company like Facebook. Facebook has been mentioned several times. It's a synonym of innovation. It's a synonym of a company where anything could be done, and which can do a lot, probably even too much. We don't like changes. We know our environment. We know what to do to leave home at 3 p.m. or 4 p.m. We know what we're getting our money for, and each new project, like do something different, sort of disrupts the rhythm of our work, in which direction they're moving, and he empowers them to do it. So the question is how it works in our respective organizations. Isn't it the case that we think about innovation in such a way, or our teams think about innovation in a negative way? They think that, well, after all, we're to learn. Favorite illustrations that comment on the reality. I was actually thinking whether you can actually eat a cake and have a cake. We've been thinking about innovation, thinking about it. It has been repeated so many times, and probably we're getting even tired of it. And so I think that, well, okay, I've implemented a business process management, a gate, and I've implemented the chairman's award for innovation, and I keep working the way I did. The innovation culture is a funny notion which starts at the top and it permeates all levels of the organizations. It permeates them so much that it determines their identity, and each incoherent. And before, he used to be a fantastic manager. He was great at analyses, policies, procedures, all the hard stuff. And that was what he wanted to deal with. And it turned out he could not deal with this because the organizational culture of IBM would not let it move forward. And you know how organizations end up that have stopped. Who'd like to work for Kodak and who'd like to work for Fuji? Who'd like to work for Fuji? Fuji is a company. These used to be very similar companies. They were active in photography and photographics, and they manufactured films and cameras. Kodak was very much derived from the chemical industry. Right now, many more pictures are taken than ever. We even take a picture of our morning coffee and we put it online on Facebook, our morning cappuccino, then we take a sip and say, this is my morning cappuccino without a sip. I'm healthier. But Kodak has gone bust because it stayed in its chemical world of films, and Fuji is being active in all sorts of industries around photography, and it's doing great. Lou determined that he could not depart from the culture, abstract from the culture, that was what he had to start with, that it's not a piece of the puzzle. Culture is an entire game for which is worth fighting for, because without it, no organization can move forward. I believe this indicator also tells you everything that we should do about it. So what is culture? What is an organizational culture? This is something which is very difficult to name because it's not described. It's not written on paper. There are no books, systems, policies. Culture are invisible convictions as we need. Only then does culture start working to our benefit. Two McKinsey consultants, based on their very ample track record with different companies, have written a book on the rites and rituals of corporate life. Each organization has their rites and rituals. It probably rings a bell, and they determine that there are 4 elements of corporate culture that you can work on. This is the company's philosophy, something that the company believes and it's fighting for. These are heroes, so people who succeed, people who are rewarded for success, who are not necessarily at the top managerial level, but sometimes they are derived from very much hidden back office or even manufacturing positions. And it's the actions of those people who inspire people to also create, resolve problems, or act in a way that we would expect them to do. These are certain myths.
How supervisors and reports are overcoming challenges, how they are making history, and these are probably rituals that help us celebrate success and learn lessons from your mistakes. So this is what is shaping attitudes and values that make our organization move forward. So these are values which, in my opinion, come first. At organizations, at Turquoise, organizations which focus on development and growth, which is not forced, but by introducing solutions co-created with employees and the external world. Would you add anything? Do you disagree with anything? I forgot about empathy. I think empathy is extremely important because we need people who are empathic. Google says that the cornerstone of its culture is belief and support for the vision of the company. They want to improve resources for people. Okay, and right now, 5 ways to hamper innovations and remain status quo. Not everyone wants to be Mark Zuckerberg or work for Facebook. Well, rule number 1, don't listen. Don't live here. I've been toiling here for 30 years and I know the organization in and out. What makes me the only one to solve my problems? So if you want to have an organization that is growing, you should be making the most of multiple choices, concepts and innovations. You should be creating situations where very different people come together, people from different disciplines, to discuss our issues. I've had the pleasure to organize such meeting aimed at discussing the energy consumption of coal grinding process. Have you ever visited a coal mine? Okay, one person has. You know that you mine lots of coal stones and later you have to grind it. You have to break it to extract 1% of precious mineral. So grinding is an energy-consuming exercise, and this is a daunting challenge for most mining companies. In one room, we've had people who were specializing in different grinding machines, and they've been doing it for years. We've invited physicians who are breaking kidney stones, and we've invited people who are dealing with microwaves. We've invited people specializing in infra and ultrasound, breaking stones with water. They were sitting at the same table, knowing the problem, and of course experts took the floor first. They demonstrated deliverables, and later, as they discussed energy needed to break kidney stones or break stones with water, demonstrated a plethora of hybrid solutions that could reduce energy consumption or meet the intended goal by combining seemingly unrelated fields. So this is the real value added. Innovations are no longer created in a confined room. They are no longer incepted by this cliché scientist in a dreary sweater. Nowadays, innovations are created in labs. If you are not hungry for innovations, don't listen. Many companies are creating conditions, the right conditions, to learn from customers. They have open days. They invite customers to come in and demonstrate and provide feedback. Many companies do it for excellent results. And second principle, if you don't want innovations in your company, build highly sophisticated management structures in your company. You could make it even more complex if you like. Steve Jobs once said that the rich don't keep up with the new ways of working. Very often we are divided. Actual structure, work structure, and the flow of knowledge, exchange of knowledge within effective organization does not overlap with formal structure. Well, not every organization can be flat and lean. If you cannot go lean, give people competencies and decision-making authority. Do it. Do it and think, and recognize that knowledge and information doesn't flow across levels. It flows within a network. This is how it is. The structure of the future would look like best. We know how to get things done. We have brilliant ideas. We've got the best R&D and marketing department, and we are going to cope on our own. And we are not going to share our knowledge, because if we do it, we won't have it anymore. It won't be unique anymore. And as a result, we won't be valuable for the organization, or our organization will disclose its secrets to competitors. So this is how companies struggle with exchange of knowledge. 41% of organizations from Fortune 500 list are cooperating with their own competition. So this speaks volumes. It proves that cooperation is the right way forward to growth if you want to create value by innovation. There are other methods of value creation. And I would like to show you a mini. So it decided to research how the organization is actually working to identify roadblocks. We are watching this cadence, but when she's looking at her network after the merger to identify where she is, she notices that she's interacting only with members of her old community. She has no relations with new colleagues from the new merged company she should be cooperating with. Have you ever tried to combine, to put together at one table people from the same organizations who have never spoken to each other, although they should? Once we've analyzed water flow cycle in the mine, so first water is extracted from the mine, from the tunnel, later it is running along pipes, goes to treatment plant. It's a very complex structure, but this is a single process concerning water, which poses a huge challenge. And it turned out that we've had never at the same table people who are working for the coal mine and people working at water treatment facilities. Some of them are, all of them are planning investments, and they are totally unaware that. Okay, also remember to define goals and make them secret. Discuss them only with tight-knit executive group and tell others just to give orders. Then your people will be performing with a limited scope. They won't be committed. They won't know what are your expectations. They won't be going an extra mile, because new, potentially attractive solutions, only effective communication and development of research agenda, and later conscious application of this tool, encouraging contribution of employees or co-development, and later external promotion will enable you to design advisors very aptly moving us forward to the final area. What would you do if you weren't afraid? What would you do if you could change something? So Facebook is telling its people, don't be afraid. If you want to dwarf innovation, punish publicly people who fail. They should be stigmatized. These are those who tried and failed. Make history of failures and demonstrate it. And then you can be certain that the number of new ideas will dwindle gradually. A failure is the part and parcel of innovations. Many big steps forward were created this way: penicillin or post-it notes, a random invasion, Coca-Cola, and many different things. So is that innovations in a well-managed company that wants to innovate, there's nothing special as you enter an innovative company when you ask, where are people specializing in innovations, and everyone is waving at you. Here I am. There is not a single team claiming to have the monopoly for innovation. Everyone is accountable for companies' growth. And this is what I wish to you all. Thank you.
Dziękujemy bardzo pięknie.
Thank you very much. Usually during our discussion panels, we tell you what to do, and here great focus was put on things, on don'ts, on go too far, it's not worth it. In several minutes, we'll begin another panel, scale up, how to put together the potential of young entrepreneurs with resources of huge corporations. This is something we've touched on yesterday. What can we do to bring startup closer to huge organizations, not only to provide big organizations with ideas and to leave startups with nothing, so that this discussion will start in several minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for staying with us after the end of the previous panel. I would like to welcome everyone who has just arrived and participants of the next discussion panel, which is going to begin in a minute, will be dedicated to scaling up. The question is very relevant, and perhaps we will hear some answer to this question today, or several answers. Katarzyna Królak-Wyszyńska, CEO of Innovatica, will moderate this panel. Hello. Good afternoon. I'm very glad that you are taking such keen interest in this topic. We are a consulting company designing and developing customer experiences, products and services. We work for big corporations and for startups trying to spread their wings. And we do know how to bring big players with small ones, but we don't know everything about it. When you look at the world of innovations, you can see that the most breakthrough innovations are created in space, which is not standard. So such solutions are created in co-working spaces, in coffee bars, wherever young people, big corporations. So corporations are keeping an eye on startups, and the ability to find the right partner among countless startups becomes indispensable. Just like working on strategy, they need a breath of fresh air market. For example, this scale-up contest, which is a part of a bigger program started in Poland. So this program strives to bring together small, agile, creative, bold companies, startups, with large, stable corporations, especially those with shares of the state. So how can we bring those small creative players? What can we do to help them effectively cooperate with big players? This is what we are going to discuss in a minute. I would like to invite my guests to come to the stage. Katarzyna Wierzbowska, co-founder and CEO of Women's Entrepreneurship Foundation. Kasia used to work for corporation, but she's decided to leave, probably to have more time for herself. But she told me once she's never worked so intensely like now. You are a social entrepreneur. As part of her foundation, Kasia has initiated Women's Network, Women's Business Incubator, and probably there will be many more initiatives added to this list. You act as a mentor, you design action strategies, help your partners get funding, things you don't do. And another guest is Katarzyna Rybicka. Hello. Katarzyna is a member of the board and strategy and development director at Amplus. She specializes in restructuring, process optimization, implementing innovations, development of product portfolio, a lengthy list. Amplus is one of the leading manufacturers of fresh fruit and vegetable. You operate beyond Poland. You went global, so you are facing a number of challenges. You have many experiences, and you must know something about sales, because you are the winner of the 5th edition of Polish Sales Awards. So I'm very happy to have you here. And Magdalena Jackowska-Reinhardt. Magdalena is the founder and the CEO of TechBrainers. She advises management boards in optimization of R&D processes. She's got broad experience in technology. She's invested in NetSpring, called the Polish Google. She has founded and invested in several startups. She's got very broad experience to invite several males. Maciej Gałązka, the CEO of Advanced Graphene Products. Maciej is the CEO of a company incepted at Wins, or when we talk about electronics or sports gear. Well, it seems that graphene is indispensable in the 21st century, and Maciej is commercializing it, and he's making our life easier and more enjoyable. Nice to have you on board. And the next gentleman, Michał Lutostański. Michał is the head of Innovations Lab at PZU, and for many years he was designing and implementing new high-tech and telecom products, and these had to be innovations that respond to customers' needs. So as part of PZU's Innovations Lab, Michał is pinpointing areas where PZU and companies from the group should implement innovations. So you play an important strategic role. You are implementing strategic projects, and you are collaborating with startups and the research community, and there is one empty seat, and will be joined by Hubert Lewiński. Hubert is the representative of the Polish Agency for Enterprise Development. Hubert is working with startups. His department had a very complicated name several months ago, which was now simplified for Startup Department. So this department and Hubert. Okay, so we are going to talk about scaling up, about combining potential of small creative players with resources of large organizations. Good things comes out of such cooperation when small and big players meet. We know that diversity breeds interesting stuff, but it also breeds challenges. So please share your pain. We have filed an application for the program, for the scale-up program, and the Black Swan is looking after startups which are trying to raise funding from big companies. And there are two behaviors, or three attitudes that we see. You know, startups are not for me, we are not interested, we are coping well on our own, and those big players, when we are talking about startups, they are either conscious, they are saying, yes, this is very exciting. And there are two areas of interest: operations, strictly business, because they are seeking for solutions to optimize processes, to reduce operating costs. And second set of arguments is related to seeking for product and I was dealing with startup on numerous occasions. I work for Poland's largest company marketing fresh produce in Poland, and cooperation is different. It varies, and I have to be absolutely honest. and identifies benefits for both parties. When you represent startups, you know that very often corporations have exorbitant expectations you cannot meet.
But often how they will be used by corporations from a perspective of a large enterprise, I'd like to make sure that this cooperation is based on balance so that we know which cooperation criteria we have adopted. Now I can say that in the company I'm with, we have implemented a cooperation with startups based on a win-win basis in the new processing lines. Right now I'm working in the farming industry. That's the scope we're moving about. So we've tried to define this at the beginning of our cooperation. Let me tell you that this process has taken a long time, and these principles that we have coined into a bilateral agreement took half a year, so this process is pretty lengthy, but without stretching my first intervention, let me tell you that such solutions as Scale Up give a possibility of building a balance in this cooperation. What I'd like to tell you about a different aspect. It's great that corporations are interested, they're willing, and declare this willingness, and I'm sure it's good that they are talking about this balance. I'd like to touch upon the readiness, the preparedness for cooperation. We're willing, but are we ready to cooperate? From my experience, it stems that, well, I've worked for 4 years on an international startup project in our business challenge for startup selection, as well as for international R&D departments. We have scouted and selected technologies, and I can also compare these experiences from Poland and tell you that corporations are only at the beginning of the way, and it stems both from my experience. The most efficient programs that have actually succeeded, that have been led to the implementation stage. The most efficient ones are such where the corporation knows what they want, and they're basing their acceleration programs based on their real needs, and they're capable of involving much more than just providing their logo or participating in implementations. Do you have an example of a badly working cooperation or a challenging one? I probably don't want to talk about wrong examples. All of them always announce a success story, but I think it makes sense to have a look at which acceleration programs end up in implementation and which ones only end up in a gala and the handing in of statues, but I think that all of us want to make sure that we have real cooperation with startups rather than just making an impression of. If we have such a material, we have to cooperate with large companies to make the success more probable, because raw material is worth just as much as the applications of it. In the case of graphene, the potential applications are so broad that we don't have this knowledge. We know how to manufacture it, we know how to characterize it, we know how it can be used, but the counterparty, the corporation, can tell us what they're looking for, and such programs as Scale Up can help us find the common denominator and arrived at a situation where it's going to be everybody's success story, and a startup through the effect of scale can lead to, and I guess this is a good opportunity for such a program and cooperation. And from a startup's point of view, in your situation, what's this cooperation with corporations like? I wish it were better. I wish it were more frequent, and that the tools were in place for a corporation to know what they want and how to go about the technology. I think what we need is courage, patience, startups, and we as a group must also have some areas defined, and it's also very important to develop within PZU this entity which will be successful in communicating with startups, because on one hand we have companies specializing in startups, but on the other hand we clash up with a large corporation, and on the corporation side there should be of startups. On the other hand we have the lab to develop a common position and trying to address the expectations of a corporation in some areas and to seek the appropriate with this uncertainty whereby nothing is certain in the case of startups. Well, we definitely try to find the right potential assessment tools. Well, it's very important if there are expectations for an implementation to take place at a given time, where startups are very flexible and they even have a single customer. It's quite difficult, but we have to accept the risk of failure, because if we have a startup at the conceptual moment and we know that they are facing a risk at this moment, it's very important to develop this solution, run a pilot, and only then do you make the decision whether it makes business sense or not. So it's very important to accept the risk of failure and to allocate the cost to the concept. So who takes this risk? Well, we have to take it. Communicate it appropriately. Communicate the benefits for the organization. That's very important. To show flexibility, the growth potential of a given solution. It's very crucial. We try to cope with this in this way. Hubert, it will have to exist in the market on its own, and surprisingly we decided that you have to stimulate it by cooperation from the potential recipients of such solutions. And here, first of all, the light was shed on large corporations, large enterprises that have the largest potential to provide a possibility of first testing, because testing is important, whether the solution presented by the startup does in fact meet any needs of the corporation, and secondly, whether it makes sense to be to become a business partner, strategic partner for a startup, which is a to be or not to be for a startup. And I guess that was the way of the reason behind the design of this project. It's a pilot, so it will take some time to before we know whether we've been successful and which conclusions to derive in the next for the next iterations of the support. Well, is such a support instrument, which is a governmental instrument, moving from the regulator, is it likely to be efficient? Is it helped? Not had such experience before. They basically went for large stable partners and they would buy technologies from them. So this is something completely new. The moment that a corporation has the possibility of confronting their problems or exposing their problems, their needs outside, to the outside, and funding them externally on 100%, they don't have to invest anything, any means of this. It allows you to take a test, but it allows you, it allows another element. Since these companies have not had such experience, it's difficult to persuade boards, that managements, that it makes business sense. This pilot will provide us with information on how many projects have been analyzed, how many have been implemented, whether it makes sense or not. So it will provide some arguments for these processes to start taking place commercially, not only when funded from EU funds. So I guess that's the clue of the project. The most important thing, that the corporation is not a beneficiary, it's a partner, which, depending on how much they get involved in the assistance to startups and defining the problems, it will just derive appropriate funding from the program. Well, it's an interesting question for me, because personally I'm against giving public money to enterprises. Paradoxically, I work where I work. It sounds like masochism. Yes, I have many moral dilemmas, but I'm coping with them. But first of all, public money should stimulate is on preparing both parties to negotiations and testing the solution. And then we're talking about commercial cooperation. There's no money for it. So I guess that's a golden rule. That's why, if I may add something, it's not about who is the regulator about this program. That's not the essence, but it's essential what the goal of this program is. So I think everybody agrees that if we're talking about different companies, state-owned companies, or a company like mine, which is 100% private Polish equity company, well, there are tens of challenges. I don't want to call them problems that we'd like to resolve, but frankly speaking, we don't know where to find the solutions. So in fact, these startups and the organization of it as part of the acceleration program is a priority goal of these programs, but it's not crucial who's guaranteeing this program. It might be important from the point of view of the startups who have a guarantee to obtain the money, because the money is guaranteed, but from my point of view, it's crucial to resolve the actual challenges and problems that we get confronted with on a daily basis. Yes, let me add to this also that it's exactly as you put it. We believe that the greatest value is running startups. So this is the greatest possibility, and whether it's enough to get 200,000 for startups, it can be different. In the case of liquidating losses, it can be different from different fraud management systems or from a processual area. There are also large projects there, so theoretically implementing something for $250,000 might seem unrealistic. That's why what's the greatest possibility for me, the greatest value is about scouting, and whether at the level we can do something is secondary. If we see the possibility of testing it on a larger scale. So I guess we're talking about greater value here. I'd like to tell you about a side effect of this program. Namely, I'm sure you know that right now there are a lot of money. There's a lot of money for acceleration. Here we have Bridge. There's going to be Starter. And there are also previous bridges, venture funds, which are also getting into the fund, or startups will be changing their trajectory from the point of view of a specific need of the corporation. Myself and Katarzyna had this talk that, well, Kasia could give about 10 ideas to startups which are realistic, and Amplus could be a customer, intermediary, or a link with the end customer. So that's a certain niche which is filled. Owing to the scale-up program, we will be able to reach for new project sources, not only the same ones which appear in the programs, but also to help other teams to create such solutions while contributing to other programs. So actually you've answered my next question, whether there are enough startups in Poland to service the Scale-Up program. As far as Scale-Up is concerned, I think so. It's more about a different program that I would have my doubts whether there are enough startups. But it's an element also which is difficult, because I'm looking at this from the investor's point of view, who has been observing increasingly higher startup valuations for 3 years, even though it doesn't involve an increase in their value. It's only a matter of an increase of demand. So the price is rising, we're paying more for what we could get cheaper. So that's also a difficult aspect behind the fact that there are not enough of those startups. We've said here that certainly a good thing which has become part of the Scale-up program is connected with the development of large entrepreneurs' needs, because once you have to make sure that this commercialization would really take place, because in line with my experience, it's not enough to create a concept, and everybody is aware of this, that innovation and real value can be talked about only once implementation really takes place. So which other conditions would have to be made for this commercialization to really be true? Well, I guess you could sum it up the way we've talked about it. These implementations have to meet actual challenges. So the corporation needs to know what the actual customer needs are and start there. And this availability from corporations to implement this, or large corporations. And from the point of view of decision makers or boards, appropriate importance should be given to this cooperation. This is absolutely key. It stems from my experience about that, where there is no management support, no such elements can be implemented. At the end of the day, we have to follow the bottom line and the financial in such programs, and that's the way I'm trying to cooperate with companies. I believe that such cooperation is actually feasible based on trust, equilibrium, but also measurable expectations and results. And how do you make sure that large corporations don't feed on those startups, don't devour them? That's a good question. I would comment on the previous part. As we developed the Scale-up program, what was important, our program, what was important for us, it was to invite a specific profile of large corporations, and we wanted to define 3 moments. So first of all, that would be a person in charge of innovations at the board level. That's interesting what you said. We have really very map of who should deal with this at the corporate level. So just to give a specific name of a person who would be engaged in specific projects, because that would mean the assumption of ownership rather than being a mere observer. Yes, I'm glad that you should mention this, because in no project that I've observed or I've heard about where a corporation has outsourced something, just do something for me, in no case were they successful. You cannot really obtain some input to plan it, to localize it, to place the technology or the project within the corporation on many fronts, and it requires the involvement of many people from the corporation. Secondly, we'll be monitoring this and observing the equilibrium between corporations and startups and confirmed. So a sell takes place very rarely, and that's the major role of experts who will be involved, and it's going to consist in teaching both parties. It's not only about teaching startuppers to talk with corporations, it's about teaching both parties to talk to each other. So a mentor will be like an interpreter or a translator. Yes, but I couldn't agree more. These languages can be very different, and the modus operandi can be very different, and corporations can learn a lot from startups. This agility and more courage to take small steps, small tests to make a final decision based on facts rather than hypotheses, where they have an agreement or not. and what will happen in just a moment, and aids and changing the process. Well, a change sometimes make decisions with a slight.
PZU Group, what is important is the innovations culture, which is the cornerstone of future cooperation with startups. Because if across consecutive stages of startup development you need different people, PZU Group must have a unit that will bring it all together, people from different functions who on very different stages of value creation will be essential. And then you need to create a link with the startup. You need to speak their language and you need to translate their ideas into the language of the cooperation. So this is the essence of effective cooperation of players large and small. Yes, we have heavily invested in that because we've taken on board a lot of young people who are ready for launching innovation. So we've got fresh blood. We've let in fresh blood to spur innovations, to spur the organization to do things differently. And I think the virus is already infected different employees. It's going to spread into different departments. And I'm sure that talking about mutual understanding of needs and culture, I don't believe that we'll be able to transform the culture because it's a long-term process. There are companies operating in the market for years, but there are acceleration programs, there are mentors working with those programs, and they will be those change agents, trying to infuse as much enthusiasm for change as possible. Okay, it's been said several times before, but I like what Magda said about those 5 principles that must be met in order to have good cooperation, and the decision maker, someone who makes decision on cooperation with startups. And representative of PZU has confirmed it, that you need someone who's going to oversee cooperation with startups, because there is a threat. They can't become corporations because it's going to kill innovation. There must be someone who's going to protect the interest of startups which are uncompromising, which are going outside the box, and they should be doing it if they want to pursue their mission. So it must be someone who's not only highly positioned within the ranks of the organization, but someone who lives and breathes the idea of startups. Because as a principle, startup is a small company without an exuberant structure. So it takes a second to sign documents in a startup. It takes weeks in the big corporations, and innovations, new things, need to be done fast. Plus time is money. Sometimes you won't be able to survive those 3 months while you're waiting for someone's signature. Yes, exactly. So from the perspective of a startup, 250,000 or 200,000, if I got it right, this is not little. This is not nothing. I know it's a different story for corporation. It's money that in startups, especially those that have great things, those things do not receive wide critical acclaim in the marketplace. So this is a great opportunity for startups to proceed with cooperation. So we are going to finish with this optimistic note. Thank you very much for your contribution, for sharing your thoughts, insights and experience, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed because I want more and more startups to benefit from this program, to engage in valuable operation with big players. So this is the true value of scale-up. Okay, we are not letting Hubert out. He has to tell us who's won the competition. Thank you very much. Scale Up. This is an open book now for you. I hope I know that you know what the program is all about. This marriage of startups with corporations is not mission impossible. It's not something imaginary. It's a reality that is going to happen, hopefully. And talking about the marriage of startups with corporations, there are numerous doubts. But if I talk about public-private partnership, it's another type of marriage which doesn't come with so many question marks, but there are some good practices we should learn, good practices from PPP. And what are the best practices in PPP? We are going to talk about it for nearly an hour during the session on Mazowsza's website, and you can watch live streaming of make this topic as interesting as possible. And as you know, it's not clear and it's not easy. First of all, I would like to tell you that the title is a bit provocative, because good practices are only being developed. Several days ago, a special team at the Ministry of Regional Development has completed its efforts aimed at actual activation of this institution, and this team also strove to put forward best practices. So I'm going to give you a glimpse of milestones, because these are not finished good practices yet. It's been provided to British diplomats for 30 years. So what is public-private partnership? This is an alternative, very interesting institution for funding different ventures and tasks, public and private tasks, without the involvement of own contribution funds of territorial governments. So it's fair to say that there are traditional methods of funding. The state institution, the self-government institution, scoops out money to build a school, a swimming pool, a sports facility. It may also take a bank loan, and this is what authorities often do. And instead of Agrov's PPP agreement signed, but please note that this is just a fraction of 100,000 contracts funded annually from the state budget within the framework of the public procurement process. So we are still in square one. We have no standards in place, we have no monitoring system, we have no invest parking sites, which were never built. Why? Because we can speculate that most people are afraid of getting involved in PPP because they don't want to be charged by prosecution services. So to get things right, and this is what we've been talking about during meetings of this ministerial group, this document pinpoints goals, and it also presents very specific legislative proposals put forward by a wide variety of people, employers, the public, chambers of commerce, and ministries. So what we need is flow of information. We have to communicate different investments that we have in the pipeline. These investments must be communicated by the state, by local governments, who should make a list of different tasks to be implemented together with the public and by the public and the private sector. Partnership licensing, which is implementing a respective directive, and a brand new tendering act, which was radically amended. So it's easy to imagine that while pursuing a PPP project, you can use the licensing model, so you can make an agreement for 30 years if it's an utility investment, or you can use provisions of the Public Tendering Act. And as a result of negotiations, which are usually held, there is structures very similar to that in other projects. You have request for proposal, you have terms and conditions of the project, and later you negotiate, and finally you may opt for a special purpose agreement, which is negotiated by the public and private partner, or you can opt for another type of cooperation. You can establish together with the private partner a special purpose company. So this is a more institutional cooperation, and then you follow procedures put in place by the commercial code. And very often there is the third partner involved, a financial institution. Why? Because it may happen that the public partner pursues a very exciting goal. The private partner demonstrates know-how, expertise, references, but the project is extremely costly. And then what we need is a financial institution that may be taken on board. And I think this is best showcased by the waste incineration plant in Poznań, or installation for thermal processing of waste, green energy. This is the official name of this facility. So state involvement in this project was crucial to demonstrate that such massive investment valued at millions of zlotys can be done with the involvement of a private partner. So the funding partner is very often tied to the private partner. Together they form a consortium to raise funds, and the public partner is beyond it, because the public partner is interested in deliverables, and the public partner would by regulation, because this investment can be classified as part of the public debt, but we have no time for going into greater detail. So we should define types of risks in such way not to turn them into disablers of the project. So it's fair to say that usually it's done as follows. We have public utility. This is the main domain of PPP, provided it for the project. Of course, together with negotiations, that lasted more than 3 years, the process is now completed. The installation is up and running in Poznań and is producing deliverables. So I think it's a breakthrough case which clearly demonstrates that you can combine private, public and EU funding. What are the legal frameworks of PPP? Well, PPP is defined by the Act about Public-Private Partnership, which is also governed by other details Act, for example, Toll Charges Act and other acts. So the PPP Act is a framework law which provides more freedom in business relations while pursuing public tasks than the above projects implemented as part of PPP. Like I've said, during the past decade, we've had 110 projects implemented. We want to have several hundred projects implemented every year. And this concept provides that there will be a central unit coordinating PPP project. Later, good practices will be introduced. Today, we can only talk about specific experience or lessons learned from specific projects, but these are not projects. And we also need training, but I'll get down to it in a minute, and sound cooperation between different ministries. We all know that public tasks were split after liquidation of the Ministry of State Treasury, and there is a lot of room for SMEs. And the pinnacle of this analysis are specific amendments to legislation which hopefully will spur development or your company. Participation fee will be symbolic because, as you know, there are no more 100% funded EU courses. So it will cost several hundred zlotys. This is a 2-day seminar, including accommodation, catering, training resources. It's a must-go event with workshops. You will receive your certificate on completion. We still have some time, so I'm ready to answer your questions. Countries, but I would like to mention something else. The world is now focused on tendering focused on innovations, and very often public entities managing public funding are announcing tenders for innovation. Last year, self-governments and the central government spent 54 billion zlotys on transportation. We know that highways, have certain quality. We know that they come at a cost, but things are done differently worldwide. Before money is spent, before bucks are spent, governments say, yes, interest rate is low, and if the public partner has cash in hand, or may obtain a cheap credit, he will be more than willing to do so. But if inflation comes back, and I'm sure it will in the next 2 or 3 years, dollar will be expensive. So the cheaper cash is, the less willing public partner is willing to reach out for external funding. Partnership is about cooperating. It must be win-win. It's about reaching a compromise. And you've touched on something extremely important, a leap into the future, innovative partnership. Easy to imagine that, for example, photovoltaic cells. There are many partners that have real estate facilities. They also consume lots of energy. And there are private players that offer free of charge solutions to their problems. They just want to share benefits later. So if a no-nonsense partner says, and I'm going to build, because sometimes church can be innovative, and the church can decide that its authorities will make an agreement for 25 years because this contract is going to generate future savings. But this is a much broader issue. you want to compare Poland, which is lagging behind other states. It's true. I went to a meeting in Athens of my legal organization, and we had our colleagues from Estonia at the meeting, and to my astonishment, I've learned that you can handle any sort of business by email, you know, court awards, you can set up a company online. So we are dragging a decade behind Estonia. So this is the right way forward. It's true that we have the Ministry of Digitization. I think this is how it's called. But when we have findings on the table, we are going to answer all these questions together with our experts, so please be patient, don't move. We are going to take a 2-minute break.
Szanowni Państwo, jeszcze jedna taka...
Okay, one more announcement. Someone's left behind a phone in Smart Business Zone. So if you know someone who's hectically looking for his or her phone, send this person here because we have the phone. You know, it may become handy.
In smart business, which will be about the next challenges, the commercialization of research results. So may I invite Ma'am Przeździecka from Warsaw School of Economics, advisor to Research and Development Center, and may I ask you to invite your guests and panelists. Please join me on this. Interesting. I can see Tomasz running. Please join us. Let's sit together. So by way of introduction, today and yesterday we've heard a lot about challenges facing science and business, how much we have been able to accomplish owing to the funds from the previous financial perspective, as well as the ones still flowing in as part of the current perspective. What else can be created in our businesses, in our universities? That's what we'll try to discuss today in the context of universities. My guests today are experts precisely in the realm of implementing inventions, the right use of scientific research results. Let me present Agnieszka Krochman-Węgrzyn from Nanotech IP, a company that has been incorporated by the Institute of Physics. Director Paweł Sobkowicz from the National Center for Nuclear Research, and Mr. Tomasz Poniński, the president of Innovative Poland Foundation. As we talk about inventions, we've talked about impressive results. In contemporary economy, the life cycle of a product is so short that there's developed every profit-oriented enterprise, but each profit-oriented enterprise, as it wants to limit uncertainty, has to cooperate with an entity which does not necessarily need to look at the bottom line. with an environment working under terrible uncertainty, because as you start research work on an idea, we don't actually know if this idea and its development will make an invention or a new product at the end of the day. These are the conditions where scientists work, but these are not favorable conditions for business. That's why the largest challenge for all of us, both on the business and company side, is to combine these two rather distant, but it seems feasible universes, and we will try to answer this question whether it is feasible. On one hand, it's quite difficult to run a panel which is held on the next day in the afternoon. On the other hand, the benefit from this situation is a possibility of taking advantage of the utterances, statements that have been made on both days. One of the sentences uttered was that Polish entities have no culture in R&D. They don't, because we've been working only for half. And I couldn't agree with the wording from yesterday's session that markets are not efficient. As a scientist and as an economist, I have to conclude that markets are definitely effective. They're by definition not perfect, but they are efficient, and that's a difference. So as you look at an invention as a product, as you look at the R&D service as a product, if it's an offer that should somehow find its way to the market, then in a way, well, this product should be prepared. And let me here ask Director Marciniak to tell us about how an invention could be prepared to be marketed, and what's the perfect way of making it enter the market. Laser the market. The latter part kind of a product is much more difficult to prepare. Practically in the industry, there is no organization that would assume the development of a product from scratch until the implementation, and it's not because there are no by and large Poland's economy. I believe that at the initial stage it absolutely ruined it, because in the communist Poland at the latter state, there has been money with different shapes, with a whole round red and so on, but first of all there was money for R&D, and there was no way of moving this money or shifting it towards remuneration, which is becoming more and more frequent given the TU support. So the company is not investing in R&D because they are pressurized by trade unions to pay the money to employees. Well, we can observe it at different stages of investment, but back in the old days, you could not appropriate the money to anything else but R&D. Right now, you have to prepare the research and development work in such a way as the business should see the purpose of their functioning. And here we are entering the area of core business. Hardly any management board can go beyond the enterprises, the company's core business, or to define the R&D needs in the long run in such a way that among those needs there will be super innovative solutions in 10 years to come. So I can just give you an example taken on by Azoty Group, who incorporated company Azoty Folie, who started leasing the property from Azoty Lamono, who were just a typical lab, a company that faced tremendous opportunities. And there are still tremendous opportunities, but since Azoty Group did not define the market well enough, and even defined it partially in a negative way, they've withdrawn from investing into this idea, and I guess that soon the receiver will sell out a mono company piecemeal with a lot of with a huge loss involved, even though the product is very well prepared to be commercialized. I've run due diligence of a mono. I know its advantages and disadvantages, and my recommendation to this business person, I wrote that if they have 5 million over the next 5 years, let's get into this. But if he or she doesn't, it has to go bust, and it looks like it is gonna go bust. But there is a huge plant, in fact, with several thousand square meters holes and reactors. That's a prime example of preparing a business for nobody. Because in Poland, something like this, anything like electronic industry is absolutely going through its teeth in problems. It had been destroyed. If I were to prepare anything for to be commercialized, that would be from taxpayers, naturally. And after several years, we probed the electroporation process, and now Tomek says we need 1.2 million to preclinical tests. Well, we cannot afford it. Someone has to give this money. I know Tomek has a deep pocket. Tomek has, so he will just give us this money. But this is about the preparation of the university. I sold patents and then used to buy patents as a board members. That's why my conversations with Tomek are very. Since we're talking about the interpretation between those two languages in these two different universes, let me turn to Agnieszka Kropal-Węgrzyn. How can you open the scientific world to the business world? How can you translate these two mutually unintelligible social circles? But if we find the right interpreter, as the doctor was right enough to observe, is there any way they could meet halfway at the beginning of the research project, if need be, or towards the end of it, when we seeking this missing million and looking for a pocket from which the money could be taken out? And the last item about consultants and brokers or entities dealing with technology transfer. Should these be university entities established in an administrative way? Is this the right way to support this sort of support for implementing inventions? Thank you very much. I believe that success can be achieved, but there are more and more companies established based on a solution, an invention, based on know-how developed in a scientific entity. This is a difficult way because our science is only learning how to implement and how to talk, and these brokers that we have in place are actually very few if we're talking about professional brokers. They can work in various entities. Technology transfer centers or companies, but they are not always very efficient. It's true that sometimes with these technology centers, it's like in the case of scientists who'd like to earn more. That's why the best ones are absent from such technology transfer centers. They're scattered among private entities, so it's quite curious that there are such entities transferring technologies next to their mother entities, and they outsource some functions and it shouldn't be the case. And as per the plans which are being discussed in the Ministry and the National Research Center, research and development pretty efficiently. It has already been observed that consolidation, joint action is a good idea. That's why in the case of SPVs there are some agreements. There's an agreement, a compact for SPVs, the so-called pact, and directors of technology transfer centers do support each other. They send information to each other about about some assignments. If someone cannot perform an assignment, they just send it to someone. Well, if it's not you, maybe you happen to know someone who could do this to make sure that this entrepreneur wouldn't have to run around this market. I recently visited or participated in such workshops organized by Vibrant R&D Institute in Radom, with a large turn-up from entrepreneurs who said that they had interpretation brokers, but they don't see them. They have a problem contacting those people, and they don't even go to a broker, but they go to a scientist colleague, because that colleague has another colleague, and together they can find a solution. And so this has also produced a gap which we would have to solve on a central basis and find a way around it, because the current system, and we have these people defined by first and last name, innovation brokers, this system is not efficient enough. So maybe we should talk about some centralization or better communication among those people that could somehow solve this problem. That's an interesting topic, and it gives us some food for thought for our administrative institutions. I'd like to allude to your statement and also combine it a little bit with the experience from the directorate. I'd like to tell you that actually the bad experiences can also provide some lessons learned, and it can be effects. And since we know what and who through how to translate the between the languages of those two different universes, I have a question for Mr. Sobkowicz from the National Center of Nuclear Research. How would you characterize an efficient system for implementation, commercialization management, and could you please indicate those mistakes that you can see in the experience of your institution, owing to which we could somehow avoid failures going forward, and how should an efficient system look as built in an efficient scientific center? Thank you very much. Well, I must admit, I don't even know what such a system could look like, because even if we take the experience from such countries which we consider to be leaders in the realm of implementing innovative solutions, be it the US, the Silicon Valley, or developing countries, the countries of the dynamically growing Eastern Asia, not each system, and a system will not take care of this, because we need people. And as it was mentioned that an interpreter is needed, naturally, these are people, and of ideas end up in a fiasco unless we accept a culture admitting failure. If we say, well, we have such a system in Poland in place, it's called the National R&D Center, which promotes R&D solutions in commercialization. Well, until the moment when on the first success, and that's a mistake, because it takes a special definition of success. If we're talking about the interpreter role from one language to another, there was this idea, well, let's establish brokers. Well, broker will be a person, well, mind you, an individual, to understand both worlds, both universes, and to become an interface. And the failure of the project is guaranteed, because to understand what money is, how much it costs, what you need to have to attract money to a project, what you need to do so that the outcomes of this project could be sold, involves such deep cultural differences that unless we talk about what's of interest to a scientist and what's of interest to a business person, but if we're talking about the least common denominator, which is money, then failure is guaranteed. So far I've been answering what a system should not be based on. Well, it should be based on such institutions which firstly promote these interpretation skills, and we will keep repeating this because it's absolutely key. And secondly, on such institutions which promote the preparedness to assume risk, and at the same time the entrepreneur or a scientist who has not delivered a project he had promised, well, I'm sorry, but their chances to obtain a new grant or a new loan drop drastically. If a system is supposed to succeed, it's bound. It has to accept risk. So we have to acknowledge that 9 out of 10 businesses fail, and the one that succeeds provides profit with a revenge. That's it. Thomas Edison, who has been quoted today, talked about those failed attempts, failure. If we have an attempt of failed attempts without calling them failures, one of them will prove to be a success. That's why this distinction between this derogatory, this pejorative approach to failure has to be clearly drawn here, because that's the world of science, that's the world of experiments, where not always do actions assumed, taken on, bring the right outcomes. I'm sorry, I beg to differ. The world of science is always successful because the negative outcome is also a success, and it's difficult to talk about failure. Failure is in the universe of business. Yes, I fully agree. That's why I'd like to depart from these words involving negative feelings connected with failure or losses, connected with the 90% of projects assumed. The negative verification of a hypothesis in a scientific world is also a scientific world, and is very short, and the huge competition requires enormous innovation expenditure, innovation capex. And whether the idea of open innovation can be the right source. Isn't it the case that innovation or solutions obtained by entrepreneurs owing to the negotiations and the joint attempt to pursue a project? I hope that the attempt will be successful. It's good to meet on a panel, but it's not a coincidence that both of you should be sitting so far apart. I've already sent an application of the scientific have to take care of the business of a scientific entity. That means that he's running a huge risk and facing a great problem the moment he decides on commercialization with an external party, because each commercialization is a matter of valuation, conditions, and terms and conditions, so on and so forth. And one of the projects where I've invested, the moment that we concluded an agreement, the director dealing with the technology transfer in Wrocław told me, you know, on the table, this problem vanishes. The problem of responsibility, accountability vanishes. From the scientific point of view, vanishes. We've obtained a grant for research. We've tabled the results. Come whoever wants and grab it. From the investor's point of view, it's not that, well, the million that the director mentioned, this million plus, these are preclinical tests. So for this device, that's a device to take the medicine to the cells, to the brain cells. So that means several million zlotys of investments, because I failed among those 10. So all around me are going to say information here, or generally the medical market, where this process of marketing is very costly, very expensive. Probably in some IT industries it can work better, because it's a matter of, well, who's first, the one is better.
And then open innovation gives you actual possibility to make the most of new technologies. But when we are talking about science, about hard science or natural sciences, or life sciences, open innovation as such, if we are talking about commercialized solutions, it's pointless. I'll just add one thing, because you've mentioned before how to do it right, to get business listen to you, to get business by things you are developing. If you look at world's most innovative R&D center, the bulk of their revenue is generated on commissioned research. These are not original inventions they are later trying to sell in the marketplace. It's commissioned research. So the problem is defined. The problem is defined by public entities, by healthcare institutions or private companies. And those R&D centers are seeking for solutions. So this is targeted research. And of course, some projects are outcomes of basic research, which is not implementation oriented, but this is another story. And later you really struggle to sell project implementation. You struggle with commercialization. You struggle with finding someone who's going to take the risk and, you know, choose 1 out of 10 solutions. Thank you very much. And you've touched on something else I wanted to address today during our discussion. Is commissioned research the option, or perhaps growing your own competencies is the way forward? Because these are two core scientific activities related to promotion of one's own competencies and marketing your research fair. You know, something that you are very well familiar and something that probably works very well at your institutes. But there are also centers very fond of this model because it enables them to develop their own ideas, market them in the marketplace later, because we are talking about commercialization of inventions seen as products. So marketing ready-to-use solutions, putting them on the table as part of open and cost-free offer. And outsourcing from the perspective of the enterprise, scientific research reveals that it's becoming more and more popular even at medium-sized enterprises. Back several years ago, research conducted in the US indicated that these are transnational organizations which are most keen to put this model into real life, and outsourcing research, commissioning research to highly specialized companies, to quasi-scientific companies or research commercial institutes. 2 years ago, other findings were published in Europe. It was a survey conducted on a sample of SMEs and MSEs, as it perspires, a group which was basically non-existent before in terms of acquiring outsourced innovation, is now coming to the fore. Corporations are collaborating with other corporations, why SMEs are seeking for specialist know-how. They are looking for experts, but freelancers. So this is where we are heading today. This is where research services, global research services are heading. So a question to all of you. Should the center specialize and promote own competencies and specialties, conducting commissioned R&D projects, or should it spend 25 years in R&D? I've been accountable for implementation, so I don't want to say everything others would like to tell today, so I'll just supplement it. Okay, I'm very glad with this lineup. I know that it's a challenging role and a daunting exercise for you. I work for a center dealing with transfer of ideas only. So there is the funding company which established this center, and the mother company belongs to the world of science, which would like to be free, which would like to be beyond what is needed today. And on the other hand, I interact with businesses. I'm negotiating contracts with them, especially with SMEs, and we have sound cooperation with them. It's usually short-term cooperation focused on short-term activities, but it's becoming better and better. Expectations are totally different. SMEs expect quick results, and those world-class solutions very often demonstrate standards that are definitely too high. So if we have a contract with a business or an enterprise and we approach the world of science, very often we are confronted with a statement like, you know, this is definitely below our standards. This PhD level job, yes, it was a challenge, in fact, down to earth, but nevertheless a challenge. And after implementation was completed, it turned out that there were things that you can discover that have never been discovered before. So I think we should give it a try, because, you know, you can find the right balance. You know, you can't only commit yourself to commissions because, you know, that would kill science. And on the other hand, you can't afford to be detached from the economy. Economy must benefit from science. I have some doubts, because I could go on and on for hours, so, you know, I'll try to stop myself. Well, obviously, the answer is it depends. It depends on the research center, it depends on the business, and it depends on the subject of the agreement, on the subject of research. To be more specific, let's start with things that are more exciting. I have an idea, and I would like to, as long as possible, you know, to keep it within the institute, to get as much of its commercialization as possible and forget about it. Things that you need to have the product manufactured. So when you have this theoretical concept created as a result of basic research funded by the state, because without state funding there will be no science, there will be no scientific research. The system will wane. So when you begin with the concept, you go through, pardon my slang, pardon my jargon, you know, breadboard is not even demonstrated, it's just a presentation of components, you know, that is meant to check if they work together. So the demonstrator, later the prototype, small volume production later, and only later you proceed with volume production, and then you fail. Because it's a totally different scale, it's a different set of challenges, different capabilities. So you have to think, what are your capabilities when you should sell your concept, because you would be unable to go forward with it. And I'll stick to the word failure. How many failures can you afford on your way to commercialization? Failures meaning projects that are flops, that will not help you attain the desirable goal. And of course, you know, it's great to do R&D work, provided that you know that you realize very well what you like to research. Because so they operate more or less like industrial labs, which mainly focus on commissioned projects. There is no success formula to fit everyone. Okay, I will stop now. R&D centers which get basic research right, which have lots of highly rated scientific publications. Many people say basic research is irrelevant. It's not true. At the end of the day, it turns out that strong theoretical background gives you an advantage when you have a concept that is marketable. And it's true worldwide, even in Poland. Unfortunately, Poland, you know, has few examples. Okay, if I may, I totally agree with you. Well, it's good because it's a discussion panel. I would just differentiate the scale. Small enterprises are usually focused on a single product, and that's why they are able to develop it and enhance it and focus all activities on one thing. They know what they expect, they know what's best for them, they know who to talk to modify the product accordingly. It's usually focused on the most profitable initiatives and thus eliminate initiatives that fail to generate revenue. This is how you kill innovations, because you mothball all projects with high risk embedded, and you only go for those which generate big bucks. So I think this model should be redefined by Poland. Baseline surveys should be driven by innovations. Innovations that are going to guarantee good return on investment and use this investment to carry on with baseline surveys, because without baseline surveys we would not have graphene. There are plenty of applications of graphene, and we know today that we are manufacturing 300 or 200 grams of graphene a month. We are not able to meet the supply, which is several-fold higher. I'm not talking about volume production, but we have manufacturers of different devices, medical devices, of rubbers, synthetics. There are so many applications in fillers, for example, and they want graphene. They want to conduct in-house research, but without baseline research, this would not be possible. The Institute can thrive on commissions if it's competent, if it's got the right team. It can initiate sound cooperation with the industry. Thank you for inspiration. It helps me as the moderator, because you've touched on something else I wanted to address today. Funding of certain marketed as a product. I would like you to visit the stall of the Institute. It's truly impressive. It features its product and service range. It's a perfect showcase of full commercialization of its products. I don't want to judge it, but in my opinion, this is a positive example how to implement your products. So a question about creating specialties and the role of state institutions. Yesterday we've heard about the attitude, believe in top-down orders. You know, right now Poland should innovate. We need innovative graphene. These should be grassroots initiative. You know, funding should be driven by competitions. And of course, you need to specify guidelines, because everything means nothing. You need to specify guidelines, but you should not narrow the scope of funding, because you know, you can't specify what people should be inventing. People know themselves what they are able to achieve. The government is not able to do that. And second thing, which is also related to the same thing, this is a matter of time. of time and doing the right thing. So it's a matter of perseverance. You have given us the example of Ammon. This technology has been developed in Poland for several decades, and a lot of money was spent on nitrate technology, like with Czochralski's nitrates in photovoltaic cells. Yes, but then came a time when we've heard, stop. Because people were arguing that, you know, there was so much funding allocated to this line of research and that it's enough. You know, this argument is too frequently used. You know, so much money was spent on this field of research, and we were nearing to the end, and the whole process was put to a halt. This whole research was put to a standstill. And I think Ammon was a great example. Several years ago, a decision was taken, you know, let's just let it go. We're not going to follow up on this research. It's a pity. Okay, things are getting interesting because, you know, we have different opinions here. The concept to define on pan-European level smart specialties, to obtain bigger efficiency of public funding allocated to scientific development. Well, it seems reasonable to me. But on the other hand, we are dealing here with something what, in my personal view, is a major structural fault. Competitions are meant now to replace the free market. No, it doesn't work like this. Funding for most research, starting with baseline research, to targeted research, is driven by grants and competitions. So we are comparing claims made by one group with claims made by the second group. And in order to ensure some appearances of being unbiased, we have the assessment scale, and the project that gains 22.3 points and a project that gets 22.1 points will not get funding because it's rated lower. So, you know, who would be able to say which of these two projects will generate real economic value in 2 decades? No one. So we need a clear vision, and we need to do it in very challenging times. Smart specialties make sense because they are generic. But the problem is, according to recent calculations, we have 23 specialties, 21. Okay, so if you have 21 specialties altogether, you probably specialize in nothing, you know, so this is absurd. Okay, I have to apologize, and I'm glad that one of the recurring motives was not the word startup innovation, but it depends. Well, thank you very much. Will there be about it for hours? Our experts will be here with us today, so you can talk to them during the break. You know, it's a lovely topic, you know, for a 2-day conference, and I'm sure it will be brought up again during another edition of Mazowsza Development Forum. It's all relevant for innovations and development of the industry. It's something we should be constantly talking about. And final panel in the Smart Business Zone is called Cooperation of Business-Related Institutions, IOE accreditation system. So I hope that you will be interested in this topic. If you are, and if you are still far away, please come near, please take a seat and take part in the final discussion panel, in the Smart Business panel during the 7th Development Forum, and when we are ready, and I think we'll be ready in 10 seconds, we are going to invite the moderator and panelists to the stage, because cooperation of day. Later, I will encourage everyone to draw conclusions. We are nearly ready, so I'm going to invite Kamila Królewska, project management manager from Mazowsza Authority accountable for EU programs. Okay, so I'll give you my microphone. Good afternoon, Kamila Królewska. I work with projects dedicated to development and entrepreneurship, and today I'll be talking about development of cooperation with business community. In Łukasz Stern, Center for Management of Innovations and Technology Transfer, Wrocław Polytechnics. Welcome everyone. We are going to address Hunter in terms of cooperation with business community related entity is lack of this awareness. They are unaware what's the scope of services provided by institutions like ours and what are the benefits for businesses offered by cooperation. I understand that the administration is trying to put the system in place, is trying to support the system, is plan it to make it effective and efficient. And my question to Magda first, how did you plan this scheme? Good afternoon, welcome everyone. Perhaps I'll begin by saying that the Polish Agency for Enterprise Development is cooperating. Previously, we were funding services provided by business-related enterprises. We were signing contracts with those institutions, and currently, within the current financial framework, we have one key tool, one key vehicle for financing services funded by SMEs. This is Action 131, and the concept of the structure. So it is our intention, on one hand, to make those business-related institutions more professional. We want to make them. We want to create a list of trusted institutions, because these institutions run by the ministry, and it's based on criteria designed in reference to previous experience. We know the market of these institutions, so this accreditation system was not developed in void. It is deeply entrenched in the Polish reality, and it's driven on previous experiences with services provided by these entities. On the other hand, like you've said before, we've got SMEs. SMEs which should be deciding which services they want to use, and they should define the scope of services themselves. There are certain limitations, though. On one hand, there are certain standards which are imposed on us, and there are also additional limitations which tie to legal regulations. There is a limited scope of services which may be financed through public funding and which may be offered as part of the program. Okay, how many entities have been accredited so far across Poland? I can't released ever since that time, and this list is currently lengthy, but it remains open. Accreditation is an ongoing process, so we know how it looks like in Poland, and if you could tell us what's happening in the region.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. At the services, this is a slightly broader catalog than pro-research catalog. What I would add to this is that it was important for us to create a tool which the province might use not only during the programming period but also out of the programming period. And not only do we provide a solution which reconciles the entrepreneur's interest, but it also reconciles some constraints stemming from the spending of public funds. What was also important for us is that, for the sake of the accreditation, we wanted to have an easy tool to identify those institutions who provide high quality services, but we don't accredit services. We accredit institutions that have met some criteria that have been described in our parameters. Also, there are some profiles indicating the minimum for who, in the case of the Mazovian province, in the third thematic goal, can obtain bonds for pro-developmental. But it's not only, the accreditation is not only for the single competitions. Do we know how many institutions have been accredited in Mazowsza? Our accreditation is pretty young. It was launched on August 31st, and so far we have accredited 4. There's a fourth accredited institution on the list. Many institutions have called us. These are different companies that have declared they would apply at a later stage. Right now, they're not compelled internally, so to say, morally compelled, but the accreditation is an open process, so irrespective of the fact at which stage a given institution would like to apply or become a business environment institution in line with the definition adopted by us, it will have such a possibility. If I could complement develop on this, there's a basic difference that in the case of the regional process, accreditation includes pro-developmental services, but in our case, as I mentioned, we have some constraints because we want to support services connected with the support of innovation. So it's more about the implementation of accreditation rather than pro-developmental, more dedicated to the business development. In our case, it's for the development of innovation by an enterprise. So that's a slightly different scope of services, but as in the case of the regional program, this accreditation is not only meant for a single activity, it's also to professionalize the entities which will make a generally proven entity and directed towards supporting entities, supporting enterprises. Okay, let me ask the representatives of the opposite side of the table. Do you think it's easy to obtain an accreditation, and is it needed? Is such an accreditation needed? Well, first of all, none of us is accredited here. Secondly, the company I represent cannot be accredited as part of this program because it's a for-profit organization, and that's a disqualifying factor. Personally, I think this is not right. I'm sorry, since you touched upon this in line with the criteria, the business environment entity cannot be a commercial entity, a for-profit entity. Well, may I just allude to this? Is it a good direction to force those institutions to be non-profit organizations? Do you think that these institutions could somehow legitimize with a larger potential, owing to the fact that they're not-for-profit organization. In my opinion, it doesn't make any difference, because in the PARP accreditation, there are also entities that have put in their statutes that they are not-for-profit, that they appropriate their bottom line to this. And in consulting companies, they don't pay the profit as dividends. So most consulting companies could work on a not-for-profit basis, but formally it doesn't make any difference in the context of competences, experience. It doesn't contribute any value added whether someone is a for-profit or not-for-profit organization. I dare say that even if a company works for profit, that means that someone physically has to document their experience in rendering services at a specified level, qualified with some value. We've rendered each other's service, and if it's supposed to testify that we can do it, I don't think it fully reflects what the entire accreditation system is about. That's about creating a system where IOBs are providing the right level of services. And what happens if such a system does not work right? If we go wrong, if the wrong business environment institutions or IOBs have been chosen. And that means that, well, if they use advisors, and that's a shortcoming, it would be good if they used more of those advisors. If they give it a try and they get a grant for innovative service, they try it and they obtain a bad quality product, they will never again go for consulting. They will get persuaded. I have no option. I'm trying to be accredited, to become accredited. Is it so hard? I tried to obtain a national accreditation. It was declined because I'm not an organization. Since we've been in the market for 6 years, I'm not an organization which would meet the criteria of being a business environment or organization, where our officials would state that in its history it has. But I've been trying to get it because each company can change their statutes at any moment, state that they're not for profit, which is a negation of the commercial companies code, because they distribute the assets among themselves. So is it not for profit? It's a fiction. Secondly, there's a circle, say 80 accredited centers, a pool of money for services which they're supposed to deliver. We're talking about huge sums of money. Money for these particular companies. That's why I've called it a monopoly, oligopoly, perhaps. Thank you. Thank you. Oligopoly. So I was thinking that if the quality of these organizations does not appreciate the quality of those organizations which want to render their services to business, and it's not evaluated by the market, it's evaluated by an official, the chances are that, well, it's difficult even for a business person to understand business fully. It's a constant fight to understand where the niches are and how to make money. Even if someone doesn't do it on a daily basis, they will tell me how it's supposed to function, and they create an oligopoly. Now, well, this is becoming an unfair game, and the standards, which are not even present in the market, but they're very hard to build. We're trying to implement products, present them in a way that they would be more perfect, better, and cost a little bit more owing to this. It stops making sense. The moment I cannot be accredited, then a person who can has that's a great opportunity. Excuse me. Don't you get the impression that a system of identifying these companies, no matter how you look at this, still, since you have to spend some public money, which is also slightly different money than the money derived from business entities, maybe the imperfection of the system is a matter of the imperfection of the system rather than the existence. Why is it that a company that wants to cooperate with different systems, they want to say, I want to cooperate with the other companies because, and the other entity says, I'm giving them this and that, and then it's up to an expert decision whether it's true. And owing to public money, some market standards get developed. You don't only choose the grant, the subsidy, but you choose the most professional service in the market along with the subsidy. You have to fight for the professionalization of the market. This does not necessarily favor such behavior in the market. Łukasz, your center, which is cooperating with the Warsaw University of Technology, does it have an easier life? An easier life? No, definitely not. Because as a university entity, we're someplace between. Well, we are even more remote from a private entity than in Paweł's case. As an organization within a university, we have to combine in our tasks the activity which is supposed to impact entrepreneurs with such activities which are supposed to impact universities. And consequently, this is again not an easy job, let alone the fact that the organization I represent is a young one, and the accreditation under both accreditation systems we've been talking about, well, the presentation of the track record, which eligible track record, which is of a minimum of 3 years, means that we were taken into account in parentheses. But I'd like to defend the accreditation system because I believe it's needed. The services. Each time we're talking about a service which wants to make sure that these functions will be performed appropriately. Of course, the problem of excess of it, if we just put it in the market, it's not going to work up to its best. By the way, Madam Director Anna Kasprzak perfectly realizes how innovation bonds have worked over the worked in the period 2010-2014, where theoretically at that time that was a program which was purely demand driven. It was supposed to support innovation, and the results are different. Some centers that have developed an innovative product for barcodes, and based on the bonds they sold them by the 100. It has nothing to deal with the activity performed by Magda or Paweł, and something that we are also beginning to provide, because what you need here are tailor-made services, services which are tailor-made each time and answering very specific demands, and what you need is a specific system to tighten the cash flows. And lastly, the non-profit quality, because it's a certain trigger of the discussion, is an obligation which might seem like an official's whim, but in fact it's a requirement, which means that we have to deal with a certain system rather than a free or haphazard collection of entities that have decided at a given moment to do something, and at a different moment they can decide on something different. And this non-profit quality, or focusing on the goal, which is about supporting entrepreneurs rather than supporting their own the economy. Well-organized entities such as the Technological Park in Barcelona, in Berlin, these are still non-profit organizations, And owing to this obligation, they enjoy some trust, which pure market game does not provide. Well, that would be it. Okay, the system is in place. If we want to be part of it, we have to meet some conditions. And departing slightly from institutional or systemic questions, issues, don't you think that a greater problem consists in the fact that Polish entrepreneurs basically don't want to, don't know how to, and won't cooperate with business environment institutions? What can you do about it? I think what is important, I mean, let's evaluate the system by its front. Or, I mean, may I just try and defend the business? It means that we were not appropriately coordinated time-wise, because Magda was saying that the accreditation is quite a young tool when it comes to the Mazowian province, whereas the bonds, I mean, there was no other option to obtain the accreditation. These activities have been assumed with a goal to, because we know that this sort of advisory services don't occur in the market. But I didn't say this. I mean that the market does not want it under this configuration, only through business environment organizations. But do businesses need your support? There's one more aspect. It's that everything depends on the conditions. Naturally, entrepreneurs do need support. You can see it. They're trying to get into new markets. They need support in marketing new products. They need new technologies, and these areas have been appropriately identified. Indeed, companies do need the support because it's done on a commercial basis. I mean, companies buy such services in the market. What does it mean? That means that they need them. Now, do they need them under such a configuration as provided by the business environment organizations? That's my doubt. Because in my opinion, the BEOs don't have the brand, they don't have enough experience, don't have the track record to make it credible and to render such services to the business. No one wants to take the risk. It's not that if someone gets a grant, it's so simple. A small company has to devote some internal resources to take care of the project, and it's also some effort. For a small company, it's an effort to develop their website, to make their advertising folder. So it's not that if you get a grant you can just write it off. We also assume the risk. We take the risk of unnecessary use of internal resources, and as well as the down payment, which is of 40%. Going forward, it's rather a bonus criterion rather than excluding criterion. And secondly, as part of the thematic goal 3, it will be done for pro-innovation services. And the assumption of the project was like this: that there'd be cooperation between accredited entities and private institutions rendering services, have displayed services at certain amounts rather than barters, and they have no problem showing that they have provided 10 services per annum. Institutions, unless an entrepreneur comes to them or they seek them, they're not interested because services. That's my reflection. So the Madam Director wants to tell something more about it. So let me just allude to this briefly, to the previous statements. As far as the national program is concerned, the accreditations and business environment institution with the use of accreditation services, well, such a system stems from the fact that it stems from the thematic goal which is described in the entire operating program, where there is focus. So yes, thematically Yes, but for me it's clear that I'm not even using the word thematic. It confuses me. I know that the goal of the program is to support innovation, so that's the main element. It's about money, and as you rightly observed, the focus of public money is supposed to enforce some focus and evolution and development in a given market. So for instance, in the case of the Intelligent Growth Program, we don't fund everything. These are slightly different services than in the regional program, and the services are focused on the program of implementing corporate innovation. So not everybody will benefit from it, but naturally we want to make activity, but in this activity in order to implement innovation with a view to the latter goal. So by using the accredited centers, well, that's the way it's been devised. The only thing I can say to defend the system is that the system is evolving. Accreditation is provided to institutions for a 2-year period, and after the next selection period, which is right now underway until March, when we see that something is not working, the services are prepared in the wrong way and something doesn't work, we'll be also submitting our remarks, and these are the remarks from the market, from entrepreneurs, based on the project submitted. So on our way, what we've been observing, we also submitted. And it's like I was saying, it's a focused service. We want to make sure that there are as many projects as possible. And under the first competition, let me just tell you that there were many badly evaluated applications. And it stemmed from the fact there was a large scope of services which were rather fit for pro-developmental rather than pro-innovative services. That's also very important because pro-innovative services are most complicated, in my opinion. Absolutely, in the case of such services, it makes sense to accredit the providers. It makes sense to check their potential. It's debatable whether each type of service should be accredited. Pavel, I promised to give the floor. What I wanted to say that if we're working under this accreditation system, okay, I also like your approach very much, where we are and how we want to perfect it. But
we have submitted 3 applications, so 3 companies indicated us as accreditation center. But in terms of accreditation services and consulting, this is, as simple consulting as it can be. Okay, so if you've touched on consulting, do you have entities, asking you to help with innovations or business development? I don't differentiate it. They want to general, after second evaluation, substantial evaluation, because the first one has not touched on it, the second one did. Well, it's been said that services you've been providing, they are about business, they are about implementing and monetizing inventions, but we can't accept them because you were cooperating with R&D centers, and we said, yes, but as a result of our efforts, new companies have been set up, we've performed our mission, so there's no flexibility. What makes us weaker in this area, and as a result we were not accredited. It's consulting, and consulting is about people. Consulting companies work this way, that when work is done at 6 p.m, when the office is closed, there's no value anymore. People walk into the office, you have innovation driving solutions, but there is no value until team members come to work. So accreditation of a company and its expertise, my point is to demonstrate that the concept and new ideas are about people, and people should be mainly evaluated whether or not they are able to deliver viable solutions to the market. And I would like to comment on the system because we focused on its perspective entity or not. This is going to be verified in reference to documents, not its charter or any other factors. Okay, so your point is entity could have developed. Because, you know, when we were establishing a foundation, an association, or an NGO 10 or 15 years ago, you could not envision that you would be expanding your business, adding new services to your portfolio. But this is what you could have done, and this is the first shortcoming. And these entities, they are not good enough yet. They can't provide, giving you a mandate to provide these services. And as a result, you don't get professionalized. The system should be supporting professionalization. So, you know, this is just the activator. You get the certificate. You know, a green light to provide services, to be better and better, but this is not enough. Business accreditation schemes, for example, New Connect. You know, these are companies which are listed on New Connect, which help you do business. So I think when you are designing a system, you should also look out for other solutions which were tested in the real marketplace. All accredited entities which received this mandate, received this proof of confidence, had to prove that they deserved it. By convening regular meetings, they had to present I think this system is less efficient than it was. You know, it just gives you a credit of confidence. It does not make business-related institutions better. It does not encourage them to acquire new competitions, no. No, unfortunately, I have to disagree with you, Magda. This scheme, both schemes have embedded evaluation elements. What are they? Where? You know, I don't see them. Can I show the website? Okay, if not, I would like to invite everyone to Mazowsza's website, and assessment or evaluation elements are clearly listed there. You know, I can't tell you because I don't know it by heart, but, you know, there is a whole list of evaluated criteria, so any entity that fails to meet them will lose its accreditation after a year. Okay, so perhaps we'll give the floor to Magda now. But coming back to your question, why entrepreneurs were reluctant to benefit from it? I have a revolutionary answer. People who designed the system committed a mistake because they've drowned us all programs in the demand-driven system. As a principle, I do understand that we should not be funding the supply of services, but if we are allocated everything to demand-driven system, we will fall into a trap which was defined by Henry Ford more than 100 years ago. Ford said, if you ask someone what he needs, he will say that he needs a faster horse, sorry, not a car, because he is only aware of the horse, not the car. Okay, time is running up, you know, try to, you know, summarize why businesses were reluctant to benefit from the system. Okay, so perhaps we'll let Magda speak up. Is the system evaluating? Is it verified? can you lose cases despite the fact that as an institution I'm the owner of the system? I don't know it by heart, so I can't, you know, tell you what are verbatim provisions, but you can lose accreditation, which is valid for 2 years only. And this accreditation is valid for development services. There was another aspect mentioned by Magda. It eluded me. I know what it was. We don't verify entities. We don't use for verification only founding documents. We use the charter and the statute and other valid records. You know, of course, these documents can be purely theoretical. They have nothing in common with the reality, but these are assumptions that we've adopted. We want those institutions to operate as non-profit organizations, but not only that. Those are not profit-driven organizations because they allocate their profits to their statutory activities, to their own development, to provide more services to SMEs. So you need to strike the right balance between commercial activities and statute-driven activities. Okay, I have to apologize. We have a heated discussion which could go on for hours, so you can continue it later. We have to finish on time because this event is coming to an end. I do regret it. I do regret that our debate was focused on actual operations of the system. We did not say why businesses are reluctant or not eager enough to benefit from support offered by this institution. So thank you very much for your contribution to the panel. Thank you. I would also like to thank everyone for this discussion. This is a very relevant topic. Perhaps we'll follow up on it. Next year, this noise can make you feel awkward. No, everything is not collapsing. We are slowly drawing to an end of this year's forum. But I would like to invite you to Smart City for the official summary of the forum. Thank you.